an impossible prison buried 3 miles beneath the capital, and tonight its creator is being marched inside as the newest inmate. Meet Elias Voss, the dungeon architect whose containment complexes have held dragon saints, dimensional predators, and one entity officially classified as a minor god. Now his wrists are locked in suppression iron, his architect rank is gone, and the government intends to make sure the man who knows every weakness in their prisons never sees daylight again. See, Elias does not design ordinary cells. His structures are living systems of pressure, mana flow, false routes, rotating kill corridors, and spatial anchors. Every hallway exists to make the prisoner choose exactly what the architect wants. For 18 years, kingdoms compete for his work. 3 months ago, the same government that celebrates him discovers something inconvenient. Elias has been keeping copies of every illegal modification ministers ordered him to hide, not the blueprints, the evidence. That is apparently enough to turn a national hero into a national security threat. The elevator descends without a sound. No floor indicator, no windows, just polished black metal and 6 armed wardens surrounding one handcuffed man. Elias stands in the center with his head slightly lowered. Commander Garrick Thorne watches him carefully. Thorne is broad, gray-haired, and wearing the crimson shoulder plate of the Directorate's Internal Containment Division. He is also carrying Elias's old identification badge. A little theatrical, the commander turns it over between 2 fingers. Chief Architect, Elias Voss. He pauses. Then he snaps the badge in half. Former Chief Architect. The pieces hit the floor. Elias glances at them once. That is all. Honestly, Thorne seems slightly disappointed. Men like him always expect rage after rehearsing the dramatic part. The elevator keeps sinking. Around them, suppression sigils pulse beneath the walls. Elias recognizes every one. He drew them. The metal behind those sigils is layered with pulverized basilisk bone because normal enchanted steel distorts under prolonged dimensional pressure. The bolts are triangular instead of circular because triangular anchorheads distribute mana stress across 3 channels. Even the slight vibration beneath everyone's boots tells him exactly which stabilization engines are currently active. St. Vere Containment Bastion, his masterpiece. The prison no prisoner can escape. And yes, the government is really locking the architect inside his own design. Talk about professional appreciation. Thorne tosses a folded document against Elias's chest. It falls at his feet. By emergency authority of the Crown Security Council, your citizenship, professional title, property rights, clearance privileges, and state protections are revoked. Elias looks at the paper. No surprise. 3 signatures sit at the bottom. Minister Odrin Kest, Director Selwyn Marr, Chancellor Illyra Dane. Interesting. Only 2 of those names should have access to this protocol. Elias files that detail away. The elevator finally stops. 7 locks disengage one after another. Then the doors split open. Cold air rolls inside. St. Vere waits beyond them. A corridor of pale stone stretches farther than human eyesight should allow. That is the first trick. The corridor is only 80 yards long. Space folds back on itself 12 times, forcing anyone without the correct authorization rune to walk the same distance until exhaustion destroys their sense of direction. Thorne steps forward. The wardens shove Elias after him. One guard smirks. Still impressed with yourself? Elias studies the left wall. No. The guard laughs. Then Elias adds, your 3rd anchor is misaligned. The laughter dies. Thorne's eyes move toward the wall before he can stop himself. There it is. A nearly invisible tremor. Tiny. Embarrassing, really. Elias notices it immediately. Someone has altered the structure since his arrest. Not enough to compromise St. Vere, but enough that this is no longer entirely his prison. That matters. They walk deeper. Every checkpoint removes another privilege. First, his suppression cuffs are replaced with sealed restraint bands. Then his personal storage ring is confiscated. Then a clerk confirms that every registered blueprint bearing his architect's seal has been burned under state supervision. That one gets the reaction Thorne wants. Elias stops, barely. Just half a step. Thorne smiles. There it is. Our architect looks at him. The originals? Destroyed. The archive copies? Destroyed. The emergency reconstruction plates? Molten down this morning. Elias stays quiet. Those plans represent nearly 2 decades of work. Cities survive because of them. Raiders clear lethal gates because of them. Entire kingdoms sleep peacefully behind walls he designed. Thorne leans closer. You built your reputation on paper, Voss. His smile gets uglier. We burned the paper. Then he keeps walking. Elias follows. His expression settles again. Because Thorne is wrong about one thing. Blueprints are instructions. They are not knowledge. And Elias has never needed instructions to understand a structure once he is standing inside it. The group passes the first execution junction, then the second. At the third, Elias notices something he absolutely did not design. A symbol is carved beneath the lowest row of foundation stones, three intersecting arches surrounding a vertical line. Most people would never see it. A maintenance seam hides 90% of the mark. Elias only catches it because one corner of the mortar has chipped away. He slows for a fraction of a second. The symbol is old, older than Saint Vere, possibly older than the capital. Yet the stone carrying it is part of the original foundation batch. That should be impossible. He personally inspected those blocks before construction. Move. A warden strikes him between the shoulders. Elias continues walking. No argument. No second look, but the geometry stays in his head. Three arches. One line. Wrong orientation. Buried beneath his own foundation. Someone put something inside Saint Vere before Saint Vere existed. Interesting. The final cell sits beneath the central load spine. Of course it does. Thorn clearly wants symbolism tonight. The door weighs nearly 9 tons. No hinges, no conventional lock. Once closed, the entire slab merges chemically and magically with the surrounding wall. Opening it requires the prison itself to temporarily stop recognizing that section as structural support. There is no keyhole to pick. No mechanism to break. No gap large enough for mist-form abilities. Teleportation fails because 6 spatial anchors overlap directly above and below the chamber. Even divine displacement has nowhere to establish an exit coordinate. Elias designed this cell for a prisoner called the Glass Apostle. The Glass Apostle lasted 13 minutes before begging to be transferred somewhere less restrictive. Now Elias walks inside. Thorn remains beyond the threshold. You once told the council this chamber was perfect. I said its failure probability was beneath measurable operational tolerance. Thorn smiles. Close enough. The wardens remove the restraint bands. That is not mercy. The cell itself suppresses active abilities. Thorn steps backward. The massive door begins sliding shut. Elias looks through the narrowing gap. Commander. Thorn raises an eyebrow. You change the third anchor. The smile disappears. The door seals. Darkness swallows everything. Then silence. Absolute silence. No ventilation noise. No machinery. No footsteps. Saint Vere is designed to isolate sound because prisoners with resonance abilities can map structures through vibration. Elias stands alone. For several seconds, nothing happens. Then the floor pulses beneath his boots. Once. Elias looks down. Another pulse. Not mechanical. Not mana discharge. Something else. A thin sensation crawls through the soles of his feet. Cold. Dry. Almost like touching old dust. The interface behind his eyes stirs. Elias freezes. His registered class is Architect. Not a combat class. Not even a traditional awakened profession. Architects manipulate dungeon geometry through encoded mana mathematics, but their abilities require plans, tools, materials, and authorization cores. His class should be completely useless in here. Instead, letters begin forming across his vision. The system attempts to identify his professional authority. It fails. His rank has been revoked. It attempts to identify his blueprint registry. Nothing remains. It attempts to locate his recognized structures. Access denied. Then the readout flickers. Once. Twice. Every line disappears. A new message burns across his mind. Legacy conditions satisfied. Ownership severed. Creations declared dead. Elias slowly raises his head. Another line follows. Hidden class awakening confirmed. Necromancer of structures. Silence returns. Our man stands completely still for exactly 1 heartbeat. Then the wall whispers. Not with a voice. With memory. His left hand touches the stone. The entire chamber erupts inside his awareness. Hands. Thousands of them. Masons pressing blocks into wet mortar. Inspectors dragging measuring rods across joints. Enchanters engraving suppression channels. Wardens touching the wall during routine searches. Prisoners clawing at stone. Blood smeared across the lower corner. A fingernail snapping against a seam. Someone striking the wall 11 times. Someone else touching the same spot every morning for 6 years. The wall remembers all of it. Elias pulls his hand away. The sensation vanishes. His breathing remains level, but his eyes sharpen. He kneels, touches the floor. Footsteps flood through him. Wardens, prisoners, engineers, maintenance crews. The exact weight distribution of every person who has crossed this chamber since construction. The floor remembers direction, pressure, rhythm, injury, hesitation. A limping guard crossed here 4 hours ago. 3 officers entered yesterday. One stood near the eastern wall for approximately 7 minutes without moving. And beneath all those recent impressions sits something far older, bare feet, dozens of them. Walking across this exact position long before the floor was supposedly built, Elias's gaze shifts toward the foundation. 3 arches. 1 line. He says nothing. The mystery can wait. Right now, the prison is speaking. A quiet chime rolls through his skull. Structural corpse detected. Designation: St. Ver Containment Bastion. Condition: functionally active, metaphysically deceased. Cause of death: creator ownership severed. Elias almost smiles. Almost. That is one savage legal technicality. The state confiscated his structures. The system interpreted confiscation as death. And apparently dead architecture belongs to a necromancer. The readout changes again. Available authority is catastrophically low. Most structural functions remain inaccessible. One ability survives the restriction: memory excavation. Elias places his palm against the wall again. This time, he does not simply receive impressions. He searches them. Construction day, foundation placement, anchor installation, seal engraving, repair cycles. Every touch becomes a path. Every vibration becomes evidence. The chamber reconstructs itself inside his mind without a single blueprint, not as lines on paper. As accumulated memory, that is much more dangerous. Elias traces the eastern wall. A maintenance worker touched this stone 312 times. A guard struck it with a baton 26 times. A prisoner once spent 8 months rubbing the same patch until his fingertips scarred. Under those layers, Elias finds his own hand. Years younger. Inspecting the completed joint, the memory is absurdly clear. He feels the pressure his younger self applied, the angle, the temperature, the exact microscopic vibration of the stone beneath his palm. And through that old contact, he remembers something he had forgotten consciously. There is a pressure release seam behind this wall. Not an escape route, a safety measure. If the central load spine ever becomes unstable, the seam redirects compression into the adjacent corridor. Normally activating it requires authorization from the control core. Elias has no authorization, but the wall does. He tests a command mentally. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. The class responds with a simple limitation. A dead structure cannot obey until a fragment of it is raised. That is when Elias notices movement near his boot. A grain of mortar trembles, then another. A thumb-sized piece of stone breaks loose from the base of the wall. It rises perhaps half an inch, falls. Rises again, pathetic, completely useless in combat. Perfect. Elias crouches beside it. The tiny fragment rotates toward him like an animal trying to recognize its owner. This is his first raised structure. Not a skeleton, not a ghost. A piece of dead architecture. Its awareness is barely developed. It has only one instinct. Remember load, remember pressure, remember where the wall hurts. Elias touches it with one finger. A faint root appears in his perception. The fragment can carry a structural command into any connected material it once belonged to, not execute the command. Carry it. A messenger. An incomplete little thing with almost no authority of its own. Our architect finally smiles. Very slightly. Outside the cell, boots approach. The floor tells him before sound ever could. 4 guards. One is the limping man. Commander Thorne is not with them. Their weight distribution is wrong for a routine inspection. 2 are carrying something heavy. 1 object. Long. Metal. Elias recognizes the gate of execution personnel. So that is the plan. No trial, no permanent imprisonment. They intend to kill him inside a cell officially rated as impossible to breach, then record the death as containment failure caused by prisoner misconduct. Clean, efficient, almost elegant. The 9-ton door begins disengaging. Someone outside has temporary control authorization. Elias stands. The small mortar fragment lies motionless near his shoe. He presses his heel against it, not crushing it, connecting it to the floor. The dead floor remembers. The dead wall remembers. And through their memories, Elias sees St. Ver not as a prison, but as billions of points where human hands once assembled something that can now be taught how to come apart. The door opens 6 inches. A rifle barrel enters first. Elias sends one command into the fragment. Carry this to the pressure seam. The chip disappears into a crack beneath the wall. Outside, someone curses. The door opens wider. Elias places his palm flat against the stone. Deep inside St. Ver, one forgotten safety seam receives a command from a piece of itself that technically died the moment the government stole it from its creator. The eastern wall shifts by less than the width of a fingernail. That tiny movement reaches the load spine. The load spine compensates. The third anchor, the one Thorne modified, compensates incorrectly. A vibration rolls through the prison. Every guard outside stops. Elias feels thousands of walls wake just enough to remember his hands. He turns toward the opening door. Then he deliberately redirects the pressure of the entire cell into the corridor beyond. Stone screams. The execution squad looks up, and the man who designed the world's most inescapable prison takes his first step toward dismantling it from the inside. The first executioner never even gets a clean shot. The corridor floor snaps downward by 3 inches, not enough to break, just enough to ruin everyone's balance. The rifleman pitches forward. His muzzle slams against the edge of the half-open door. Elias moves. 1 step, 1 shoulder turn. 1 hand closes around the weapon before the guard can recover. The architect twists the rifle sideways and drives its stock into the man's throat. No wasted movement, no heroic flourish. Just geometry. A second guard lunges through the doorway. Elias pivots behind the slab. The man follows. Bad decision. The cell remembers exactly where hundreds of prisoners have tried to resist arrest. It also remembers exactly where the floor carries the least load. Elias presses 2 fingers against the wall. The tiny fragment inside the pressure seam answers, barely. A weak pulse. Enough. 1 floor tile rises at an angle. The guard catches his boot. His body rotates. Elias lets momentum do the work. The man crashes shoulder first into the wall. Before he can breathe again, the wall shifts inward 1/2 inch. His armor catches between 2 stone plates. Now he is pinned. Not crushed. Not dead. Just completely useless. The other 2 executioners stop outside. Smart. At least someone here understands the concept of a doorway. Then the corridor ceiling groans. All 4 men look up. Elias does not. He already knows what the ceiling is doing. See, St. Ver is not built from separate rooms. Every chamber, hallway, support spine, mana duct, anchor, and emergency seal is part of one enormous load-sharing organism. Damage 1 point, and 5 surrounding systems compensate. Alter the compensation pattern, and the prison begins moving force exactly where its architect wants. That is how Elias designed it. Now his hidden class lets him communicate with the corpse of that design. A system readout forms quietly behind his eyes. Structural command transferred. 1 fragment raised. Necrotic integrity, negligible. Authority radius, 6 feet, 6 feet, almost insulting. Still enough to start. The 3rd executioner fires through the doorway. Elias is already moving. The shot chips stone behind him. That chip does not fall normally. It trembles. His class notices it. Fresh structural remains detected. Eligible for temporary raising. Interesting. Elias touches the damaged wall as another bullet strikes. A second chip breaks free. Then a third. The pieces lift from the floor. Not high. Not dramatically. They scrape along the stone like insects learning how to move. Each one carries a faint impression of the wall it came from. Stress, impact, direction, memory. Elias gives them a single command. Return the force. The rifleman fires again. The newest chip absorbs the vibration of the impact. Then it shoots backward through the crack beneath the door. A metallic bang follows. Someone screams. The 4th guard starts retreating. The floor tells Elias, heel first. Uneven stride. Fast. Panic already entering the gate. Our architect steps into the corridor. The wounded rifleman is clutching his hand. 1 raised chip has buried itself inside the weapon's trigger assembly. The gun is dead. Elias takes it anyway. He removes the magazine. Then he tosses the rifle aside. Thorne's execution squad came prepared for a helpless prisoner. They did not prepare for the prison itself to become hostile. That is going to be a recurring problem. The retreating guard reaches the corner. Elias puts his palm against the nearest wall. Memory excavation spreads. Contacts flood his senses. Boots, gloves, maintenance tools, blood. Thousands upon thousands of touches layered over years. He filters them. Recent. Today. Security personnel. The corridor unfolds inside his mind, not visually. Structurally. He feels where every connected stone was touched. The escaping guard slaps 1 hand against the wall while turning. There. Elias tracks the contact. He does not need cameras. He has architecture. The system responds again. New derivative function recognized. Contact trace. Not a complete skill. Not yet. More like a behavior hidden inside memory excavation. Elias tests it on the guard's handprint. A trail of recent contact points lights up through the connected corridor. Door frame, rail, wall, checkpoint plate. The man's entire route appears as a chain of remembered touches. That changes things. Elias follows. Slowly. No need to rush. Every second he stays connected to St. Ver teaches him more about what this class can do. The tiny mortar fragment returns first. It crawls out of a seam near his boot. Its surface is cracked now. That little trip almost destroyed it. Elias crouches. The fragment settles against his fingers. Another readout forms. Raised structure fragment. Integrity, 19%. Retained memory. Local load behavior. Command capacity, 1. Evolution unavailable. Pathetic, useful. Exactly what he needs. He places the fragment inside the inner seam of his prison uniform. Not sentimental. Inventory. This thing is now the only structural minion he controls directly. Destroying it would be inefficient. Behind him, the pinned guard groans. Elias looks back. The man is conscious. Good, that saves time. He walks over. Who authorized the execution? The guard stares at him. Nothing. Elias touches the wall beside the man's head. The stone remembers the guard's hand from earlier, then another memory. The guard leaning against this exact wall while speaking to someone before the cell opened. A voice is not preserved perfectly. Structures remember pressure better than sound. Still, faint vibration patterns remain. Elias concentrates. 3 words become recognizable. Director Marr approved. That is enough. He removes his hand. The guard goes pale. Elias says nothing about how he knows. That would ruin the atmosphere. Instead, he pulls the man's security seal from his belt. Mid-tier access. Useful. Then he presses the nearby release point. The wall lets go. The guard falls. Elias turns away. Stay down. The man actually does. Smartest decision anyone has made tonight. 2 corridors later, an alarm finally begins. Red lines ignite beneath the floor. A low bell rolls through St. Vere. Containment breach, Sector 7. Internal lockdown protocols activating. The announcement reaches every occupied level. Prisoners start shouting. Doors slam. Mana barriers rise. Elias stops at an intersection. This is where most escapees make their fatal mistake. They hear alarms. They panic. They run toward anything that looks like an exit. St. Vere is designed specifically to weaponize that instinct. During lockdown, the apparent shortest route to the surface redirects directly into suppression chambers. The ugly route is the safe one. 3 left turns, 2 descents, 1 maintenance spine, then upward. Elias knows that because he built it. But he does not take that route. Not yet. Escaping now would waste the largest structural corpse he has ever touched. Our Necromancer turns away from freedom. He heads deeper. The alarms intensify. Behind security walls, wardens begin mobilizing. Elias follows their footsteps through the floor. 27 men leave Barrack C. 12 move toward Sector 7. 8 seal the vertical lifts. 7 head for the central control spine. Efficient response. Still too slow. Elias reaches an abandoned maintenance room. The door recognizes the stolen seal. It opens. Inside sit shelves of obsolete repair tools. Most are useless. One is perfect. A structural-sounding hammer. The head is small, dense, originally designed to test internal fractures by vibration. Elias picks it up. The tool has no magical property at all. That is why he likes it. He strikes the wall once. Tonk. The sound travels. His class listens. The wall remembers the impact. Nearby stones repeat the stress. For the first time, Elias gets a clean sense of how far his influence can propagate without direct contact. 6 feet from the fragment. Perhaps 11 through uninterrupted load-bearing stone. Less through repaired joints. Almost nothing across modern composite barriers. He strikes again. Different angle, different force. The return vibration reveals a narrow maintenance cavity behind the wall. Elias already knows it exists. He is testing the class. Third strike. This time, he sends a command through the impact. Remember this rhythm. The raised fragment inside his uniform trembles. Interesting. He taps again. 3 short impacts. 1 long, 2 short. The fragment responds with a tiny scrape. Our architect repeats the sequence until the response becomes immediate. He is teaching dead masonry a command language, not words, stress patterns. Of course he is. A necromancer of structures does not need chanting. He needs load signatures. That gives Elias an idea, a dangerous one. He leaves the maintenance room with the hammer. The alarm has spread to 2 more sectors. Good. More movement means more fresh contact memory. More footsteps, more pressure, more information. He descends 1 level, then another. St. Vere grows older as he moves downward. Upper levels have been renovated repeatedly. New plating, replacement runes, modern barriers. Down here, original stone remains exposed. His stone. That matters. The memories are clearer. His authority feels stronger. Not because of ownership. That is gone. Because his hands touched almost everything during construction. The deeper he walks, the more of himself the prison remembers. At the bottom of a spiral corridor, Elias finds a wall panel covered with scratches, prisoner marks, years of them, names, dates, threats, prayers. 1 symbol appears again, 3 intersecting arches, 1 vertical line. Elias stops. Same geometry as the mark near the foundation. Except this one is newer. Someone carved it after St. Vere became operational. Beneath it sits a phrase in old containment shorthand. The foundation listens downward. Elias studies the carving. No theatrics. No shock. Just recalculation. The symbol is not random. Someone inside St. Ver knows about whatever lies beneath it. That changes the priority list. Escape. Evidence. Survival. Now Foundation investigation joins them. Not first, but close. Footsteps approach from behind. 6 wardens, heavy armor, shock lances. Elias touches the wall. Fresh contact traces show their formation. 2 front. 3 rear. 1 officer staying back, likely carrying a suppression field projector. Better equipped this time. He reaches into his uniform, pulls out the raised fragment, places it against the floor, then he taps the wall with the sounding hammer. 3 short. 1 long, 2 short. The fragment crawls into a floor seam. Command capacity. 1. Elias gives it a new instruction. Follow connected mortar until reaching the next load junction. Then wait. The fragment disappears. Our Necromancer steps around the corner. The 6 wardens see him. Down. Elias lowers himself immediately. That surprises them. The officer lifts one hand. Hands behind your head. Elias complies. Now they relax. Just slightly. Exactly enough. The front pair approach. The suppression projector hums. Elias feels his connection to the wall weaken, so that is the field's actual effect. It does not suppress the hidden class directly. It interrupts active mana commands crossing through material. Important distinction. The wall still remembers. He simply cannot tell it what to do while the field is covering the connection. Good to know. 1 warden reaches him. Elias looks at the floor. The raised fragment is no longer inside the suppression radius. Perfect. He taps 1 finger against his own knee. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. The rhythm passes through his body into the stone beneath him. The fragment receives it from beyond the field. The load junction releases. A section of ceiling 20 feet behind the squad shifts. Not collapses. Shifts. Every warden turns. There is the trap. Elias lunges. He grabs the nearest shock lance and pivots the weapon sideways. The arc discharges into the second guard's armor. Both men convulse. The officer swings the projector toward him. Too late. Elias kicks the first guard into its line of sight. Suppression field breaks. His connection to the corridor returns. He slams 1 palm against the floor. The dead structure responds. A maintenance plate snaps upward. The projector catches under its edge. The machine flips from the officer's hands and crashes into the wall. Another guard charges. Elias does something new. He reaches into the memory of the floor, finds the pattern of thousands of footsteps, then forces 1 raised tile to repeat a fraction of that pressure. Not enough to lift a man, enough to alter traction. The guard's foot skids sideways. Elias strikes the exposed wrist with the sounding hammer. The lance drops. Our architect catches it. 1 thrust. Armor joint. The shock discharge folds the guard immediately. The remaining 2 hesitate. That is all Elias needs. He points the lance toward the wall behind them. Leave. 1 man actually laughs. Wrong response. Elias taps the wall once. The corridor door behind the pair slams shut. Then the side walls move inward by 2 inches. Only 2. Barely anything. But these men know St. Ver. They understand what moving walls mean. The laughter disappears. Both retreat their weapons. Elias takes the officer's access seal. Higher tier than the last one. Much better. Then he looks toward the fallen suppression projector. He could destroy it. Instead, he opens the casing. Studies the inner lattice. Removes 3 focusing rods. Keeps them. Never waste useful material. The hidden class stirs again. Repeated command architecture detected. Structural necromancy proficiency increased. Authority radius expanded. 9 feet. Small gain. Massive implication. The class grows through use. More importantly, it seems to reward structural manipulation rather than killing. That suits Elias perfectly. He does not need an army of corpses. He needs a city. The tiny fragment returns several minutes later. Its integrity is down to 11%. 1 more command like that and it probably crumbles. Elias places it on his palm. The thing has changed. Barely. A thin line now circles its surface. A pattern copied from the mortar junction it traveled through. Its memory capacity has increased. It remembers not just pressure. It remembers a route. Companion evolution initial adaptation detected. Path memory acquired. Now that is useful. Elias brings the fragment to the wall. Show me. It slides from his palm. Touches the stone. Then turns. Not toward the maintenance corridor. Not toward the surface. Down. The fragment scratches once against the floor. Then again. The same rhythm. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Elias looks at it. He never taught it to repeat commands on its own. The little piece scratches again. Down. A faint vibration answers from somewhere beneath St. Ver. Not part of the prison. Older. Deeper. And carrying the exact same rhythm. Elias crouches. His hand touches the floor. Memory excavation reaches downward. For 1 instant, something vast brushes against his awareness. Stone older than the capital, foundations beneath foundations. Corridors sealed before St. Vere was designed. Then the connection snaps, the fragment cracks. Elias catches it before it breaks completely. 7% integrity, enough experimenting. He wraps it in cloth and stores it inside his uniform. The mystery beneath St. Vere can wait. For now, Elias needs leverage. A prison riot would be noisy but uncontrolled. Killing wardens would bring military intervention. Destroying St. Vere outright would bury evidence and possibly thousands of prisoners with it. Messy. Inefficient. No. He needs the Directorate to believe St. Vere remains mostly operational while he quietly takes control of its internal skeleton. A fake recovery. A controlled failure. A structural lie. Elias moves toward an old maintenance hub. There, hidden behind two obsolete power conduits, sits an analog stress recorder. Modern wardens barely use these anymore. Elias does. He removes the recorder plate, uses the stolen access seal to open a junction box. Then he reroutes 3 feedback lines. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obviously broken. The next time Central Control checks Sector 7, the system will report that structural instability is decreasing. Meanwhile, Elias alters a second line. That one quietly diverts inspection alerts from the lower load spine. A third adjustment makes all minor wall movements appear as residual vibration from the earlier breach. There it is, the first trap. Not a death trap, an information trap. St. Vere will tell its operators exactly what they want to hear. Elias presses the recorder plate back into place. He even wipes the dust from the edge. Professional standards. The floor suddenly trembles. Not from him, boots. Many, far above. Central response teams entering the lower sectors. Commander Thorne is finally coming personally. Better. Elias touches the wall. Contact trace catches hundreds of recent handprints. He follows them toward the control spine. Then another trace appears. Older than the others. Director Selwyn Marr. His hands touched these walls 3 days ago. That is strange. Marr never visits St. Vere. He hates underground facilities. Elias follows the remembered contact through 3 connected chambers. The trail ends at a sealed administrative vault. Interesting. If Marr came down here before Elias's arrest, then this operation started earlier than expected. Our architect changes direction. The control room can wait. Thorne can wait. Freedom can wait a little longer too. He approaches the administrative vault. High security. No conventional access. Designed by Elias himself. The door is formed from 5 interlocked plates that only separate when pressure is applied in the correct sequence. Normally, impossible without the proper authorization pattern. Elias places the weakened fragment against the bottom seam. Then he lifts the sounding hammer. 1, tap, 2. Pause. 3 lighter taps. The wall remembers installation. The door remembers assembly. The fragment remembers routes. Elias combines all 3. A new structural command starts forming inside his mind. Not opening, not breaking. Something better. Reenact construction. The interface reacts immediately. Unregistered technique detected. Insufficient proficiency for full execution. Partial reconstruction available. Elias smiles. Good enough. He taps the sequence again. Deep inside the door, 5 plates remember the day workers fitted them together. For one brief moment, the lock stops behaving like a completed vault. It behaves like a structure still being assembled. The lowest plate separates, 1/2 inch, then 1 inch. Enough for fingers. Elias grips the edge. The fragment trembles violently. Its integrity falls, 6%, 5, 4. The plate moves, 3, 2. Elias pulls harder, 1. The fragment crumbles. Silence. Dust rests in his palm. The first raised piece of St. Vere is gone. Elias looks at the remains. No grief. But he does not throw them away. He folds the dust into the cloth and puts it back inside his uniform. Useful material is still useful material. More importantly, the fragment proved something. Raised structures can learn. They can carry routes, they can transmit commands, they can even trigger memories without being directly instructed. The next one needs to survive longer. The next one needs more integrity. And if Elias can eventually raise an entire wall section instead of a chip, yeah, St. Vere has a very serious problem. The vault plate finally gives enough. Elias slips inside. Rows of sealed evidence cabinets line the room. Government records, prisoner dossiers, confiscated research, black site authorization logs. He does not search randomly. He follows Marr's remembered handprints. Cabinet 7, second shelf, a sealed packet. Elias opens it. Inside is a partial structural survey of St. Vere's lower foundation, not his survey. Different handwriting, different calculations, dated 11 years before construction began. At the bottom sits the 3-arch symbol, 1 vertical line, and beneath it a project name, palimpsest. Elias reads the page once, then folds it, keeps it. Outside the vault, armored footsteps thunder closer. Thorn. Dozens of men. The commander is finally approaching the wrong problem with the correct amount of fear. Elias replaces the cabinet door, closes the vault as far as the damaged plate allows. Then he places both hands against the stone. Saint Vere answers faintly. Not obedient yet, not alive either, dead. Remembering, waiting. Elias reaches into those memories and selects 3 separate pressure seams across the lower sectors, one near the barracks, one beneath the control spine, one behind the emergency armory. Then he begins teaching the prison 3 new lies. The barracks will appear stable while its doors quietly lose alignment. The control spine will report normal load while its emergency shutters prepare to jam. The armory floor will remember every weapons cart that ever crossed it and mark the exact routes for later. No explosion, no collapse. Not yet. This is accumulation. First he learns the corpse. Then he raises pieces. Then he teaches them routes. Then he lets the wardens keep believing the prison still belongs to them. By the time Thorn reaches the vault corridor, Elias is already gone. Only one thing remains behind. A tiny vibration inside the wall. 3 short, 1 long, 2 short. Far below Saint Vere, something ancient answers again, and this time, more than one section of buried stone answers with it. Commander Garrick Thorn brings 42 armed wardens into the lower containment ring to arrest 1 unarmed architect. That number tells Elias exactly how frightened the Directorate has become. The second clue is the portable siege anchor rolling behind them, and the third is the woman walking beside Thorn with a silver inspection mask covering half her face. Elias recognizes her immediately. Marshal Sabine Rook. Internal containment sends Rook when a prison is no longer considered a prison. They send her when it becomes a battlefield. Our architect watches the formation through the floor from 2 corridors away. Every boot step arrives through the stone as a clean pressure signature. Heavy units in front, suppression teams behind. Engineers around the siege anchor. Rook near the center. Thorn stays slightly behind everyone else. Naturally. See, normal suppression projectors interfere with commands traveling through mana-sensitive materials, but a siege anchor does something much nastier. It temporarily declares every connected structure inside its radius state property under emergency magical law. No private authority. No inherited claim. No unauthorized manipulation. Elias helped invent the protocol, which makes seeing one pointed at him deeply annoying. More importantly, Saint Vere should have only 2 operational siege anchors. This is a third that does not match the official inventory. Elias stops moving. There it is again, another deviation. First, someone modifies the 3rd spatial anchor. Then Director Marr visits the lower foundation days before the arrest. Now a siege anchor that should not exist is sitting inside Saint Vere. His original assumption was simple. The government discovers his evidence archive, panics, removes him, and attempts to erase loose ends. That explanation is no longer sufficient. Too many resources are appearing that were never part of Saint Vere's registered systems. Our man does not waste time being offended by the universe. He recalculates. Escape becomes secondary. Understanding who has been altering his prison becomes essential, because whoever changes Saint Vere without his knowledge has access deeper than the Crown Security Council should possess. Elias places one hand against the corridor wall. The structure answers, faintly. His authority has grown since the vault. Not enough to command whole sectors. Enough to feel where the prison resists him. The resistance pattern is wrong. Sections near the siege anchor go silent one by one. Dead stone becomes dead to him twice over. That thing is effectively cutting nerves. Brutal. Useful information. He removes the cloth packet from inside his uniform. Inside sits the powdered remains of his first raised fragment. Elias pours the dust into his palm. Nothing moves. The little structural servant spent everything opening the vault. Its memory should be gone. Instead, one grain rotates, then another. A tiny spiral forms. The system notices. Residual structural memory detected. Reassembly possible. Material insufficient. Elias looks down at the floor. Plenty of material. He presses the dust into a damaged seam where gunfire cracked the mortar earlier. Then he taps the stone with his sounding hammer. 3 short, 1 long. 2 short. The cracked mortar trembles. Dust pulls inward. Fresh fragments break free, not randomly. They gather around the old remains. A shape begins forming in his palm. Still ugly. Still barely larger than a clenched fist. But this one has a defined center. Layers of stone wrap around a dark mortar core. Thin grooves run across the surface like miniature corridors. The interface updates. Raised structural node formed. Retained trait. Path memory. New trait. Junction sense. Integrity. 41%. Command capacity. 2. Much better. The little node rolls once across Elias's palm, then points toward the nearest wall seam. No eyes, no limbs, no personality anyone sane would recognize. Still, it clearly wants to move. Elias lets it. Scout. The node disappears into the seam. That is Command 1. He keeps Command 2 unused. Outside, Thorn's force enters the lower ring. The siege anchor activates. A deep metallic pulse travels through St. Ver. Elias feels half the sector vanish from his awareness. Rook raises one hand. The wardens stop. Voss. Her voice carries through the corridor amplification grid. You are surrounded. Elias keeps walking, not toward safety. Toward them, Rook continues. You have assaulted Directorate personnel, damaged sovereign infrastructure, stolen classified records, and compromised a national containment asset. Elias reaches the final corner. That list got longer quickly. Several wardens visibly tense. Rook's head turns. She sees him. No armor, no rifle, prison uniform, hammer in one hand. Apparently that is enough to make 42 professionals raise their weapons. The reputation helps. Thorn steps forward. His expression is much less theatrical now. You should have stayed in the cell. Elias glances at the siege anchor. That model is not registered. Thorn's jaw tightens. Tiny reaction. There it is. Rook notices too. Interesting. Maybe she does not know everything. The marshal draws a narrow black blade. On your knees. Elias studies the corridor instead. This junction has 4 access routes, 2 emergency shutters, 1 ventilation spine, 3 load columns. The eastern column carries 12% more weight than his original design specifies. Recent modification. Again. He shifts his attention to the ceiling. Someone has installed dense conduit bundles above the central lane. Additional infrastructure, unlisted, connected toward the foundation. The mystery keeps getting heavier. Thorn mistakes the silence for hesitation. Last warning. Elias looks at him. Move the siege anchor 6 feet left. Thorn blinks. What? The floor beneath it is overloaded. One engineer looks down instinctively. Thorn laughs. There is the arrogance. Still trying to command the room? No. Elias lightly taps the sounding hammer against the wall. I am informing the engineer. Rook's gaze sharpens. The marshal immediately turns toward the anchor crew. Check the load. Thorn snaps. Ignore him. Bad choice. The first stage begins exactly there. The Directorate owns every advantage. Numbers. Weapons. Suppression. Legal authority. A device specifically designed to deny structural manipulation. Elias has a hammer and a hidden class he awakened less than an hour ago. On paper, this is embarrassingly one-sided. Then again, paper has not been especially reliable tonight. Thorn gives the order. Take him. 6 wardens advance. The siege anchor pulses again. Elias's connection to the floor disappears. No structural commands. No contact trace. No memory excavation beyond direct touch. Good. He needed to confirm the effective radius. The front warden swings a shock baton. Elias sidesteps. Second baton. He ducks. Third man tries to grab his shoulder. Elias uses the attacker's wrist as leverage and sends him directly into the second. He is not stronger. He is simply standing in a corridor whose exact dimensions he knows down to the fraction of an inch. 1 step left puts him outside a baton's optimal arc. Half a step forward forces armored men to collide. A turn near the wall eliminates their numerical advantage. Architecture. Before necromancy. Always. Rook sees it. Spread. The squad changes formation immediately. Better. The second stage begins. Pressure. Adaptation. The wardens stop chasing him individually. 2 hold the front. 2 angle shock lances from behind. The remaining pair move toward his escape routes. Rook advances personally. Her blade touches the wall. A suppression current spreads through the stone. Elias feels the structure go numb, so her weapon carries localized nullification. That was not in her old equipment profile. Another deviation. He updates again. Rook closes distance. Fast. Much faster than Thorn's men. Her first strike cuts the sounding hammer's handle. Elias lets the broken half fall. Second strike catches his sleeve. Third nearly reaches his throat. This woman is not an administrator wearing ceremonial armor. She fights containment breaches personally. Good to know. Elias retreats toward the eastern column. Exactly where they expect him not to go. The engineer beside the siege anchor keeps glancing at the floor. He has noticed something. Hairline cracks. Small ones. Growing. Thorn sees him looking. What is it? Sir, the foundation pressure maintained the field, but the anchor is adding vertical load. Thorn turns toward Elias. Realization arrives late. Our architect gave them the warning because he wanted to see whether they understood their own equipment. They do not. The siege anchor weighs nearly 4 tons. Its stabilizing field adds an artificial downward pressure equivalent to another 6. St. Ver can handle that easily under normal configuration. but the third spatial anchor above this sector is misaligned. The same modification Elias noticed before his imprisonment. Every corrective pulse is transferring additional stress toward the eastern column, not enough for collapse, not yet. Rook sees the cracks. Move it. Thorn snaps back. No. That single word tells Elias more than any interrogation could. Thorn needs the siege anchor active, even if it damages St. Vere. Why? Because capturing Elias is not the only objective. They are afraid of him touching something lower, something connected to the foundation. The answer is almost visible now. Rook attacks again. Elias catches her wrist with both hands. The blade stops 1 inch from his ribs. Strength difference is obvious. She starts forcing it downward. He cannot win that contest, so he does not try. His heel strikes the eastern column. Direct contact. Suppression blocks external commands, but direct contact still preserves memory input. The stone opens inside his awareness. Construction, repairs, stress tests, recent conduit installation, and suddenly Elias finds something impossible. The eastern column remembers being cut open 9 days ago. Workers insert a black metal channel through its center. They seal the stone again. No registered maintenance order exists. The hidden conduit runs downward, toward Project Palimpsest. There, the mismatch becomes a pattern. This entire arrest is connected to whatever sits beneath St. Vere. Elias instantly abandons his earlier plan to seize the central control room. Wrong target. He needs the lower foundation. Rook forces the blade closer. Yield. Elias looks past her. At the siege anchor. No. Then stage 3 begins. He slams his palm flat against the eastern column. Memory excavation dives into the stone. Not searching for footsteps. Not searching for hands. Searching for construction state. The same concept he tested on the vault door. Reenact construction. Before, he could only make 5 plates remember being assembled. Now he applies the principle to something larger, the column, not the entire column. One repair seam, one recent repair seam. The prison remembers workers cutting the stone open 9 days earlier. It remembers the separation, the exposed cavity, the moment before the replacement mortar hardened. Elias forces that memory forward. For 1 second, the repaired section forgets that it is repaired. A vertical crack opens. Rook feels it beneath her hand. Her eyes widen. Inside the column sits a black conduit neither of them should be seeing. Thorn immediately shouts, "Kill him! Not capture! Kill!" Rook hears the change. So does everyone else. That matters. Elias drives his shoulder into her chest. She stumbles back. The siege crew turns their weapons. He touches the exposed conduit. The metal is not part of St. Vere, but the stone surrounding it remembers every person who installed it. Gloved hands. 4 workers. 1 supervisor. And 1 familiar touch. Director Marr. The conduit pulses. Something far below answers. 3 short. 1 long, 2 short. Elias goes completely still. That rhythm. Again, not from his structural node. From beneath the prison, the siege anchor surges. Thorn screams, "Full output!" The field slams outward. Every structural connection Elias has collapses. Almost every connection. 1 remains. A tiny moving point inside the wall. His raised node. It traveled beyond the suppression radius before the field peaked. Path memory, junction sense, and 1 unused command. Elias taps the exposed conduit with 1 finger. 3 short, 1 long. 2 short. The rhythm enters metal, stone, mortar, then vanishes beyond the field. His node receives it. Command 2. Find the nearest emergency shutter junction. Remember, open. The node moves. Rook understands something is happening. She grabs Elias by the collar. What did you do? Very little. That is technically true. The finishing action belongs to something much smaller. 20 feet behind the directorate formation, a dead stone node reaches the shutter housing. It remembers routes. It senses the junction, and it carries Elias's command into the mechanical frame. The emergency shutter remembers thousands of inspections, thousands of openings, thousands of closings. The node does not have enough authority to move the whole door, so it chooses the smallest critical piece, the locking pin. 1 inch of metal shifts. That is all. Then the siege anchor pulses again. The vibration hits the misaligned system. The half-released pin snaps. The emergency shutter drops. Not onto anyone. Between the siege anchor and its external stabilizer crew, the control cable tears free. The field dies instantly. St. Vere returns to Elias like a flood. Walls, floors, columns, doors, footsteps. Every connected memory slams back into his awareness. 42 wardens suddenly become 42 moving pressure signatures. The corridor becomes transparent in every way that matters. Elias acts once. He sends a command through the eastern column. Release stored compensation. The overloaded floor beneath the siege anchor settles. 6 inches. The machine tilts. Engineers dive away. Its stabilizing arms tear loose. The 4-ton device crashes sideways and blocks the entire central lane. Nobody dies. Nobody needs to. But the Directorate formation breaks completely. Rook lands on one side. Thorn ends up on the other. And every soldier in the lower ring sees the same impossible thing. The prison moved for Elias Voss. Not a door he hacked. Not a mechanism he unlocked. Stone moved. A wall reopened an old wound. A floor lowered itself. An emergency shutter obeyed something nobody could see. Rumors are born from less. Thorn points across the wrecked anchor. Fire. Nobody fires immediately. That hesitation is new. Elias notices. So does Rook. The marshal looks at the black conduit exposed inside the eastern column. Then at Thorn. What is that? Thorn says nothing. Wrong answer. Rook steps closer to the opening. Commander. Thorn raises his pistol. Not at Elias. At Rook. There it is. The entire room changes. Several wardens lower their weapons toward their own commander. Thorn realizes the shift too late. He fires. Elias touches the wall. The structure remembers the impact from hundreds of earlier weapons tests. He does not block the bullet. He alters the angle of one loose maintenance plate by barely 2 degrees. The shot clips the edge, deflects, misses Rook's neck, hits her shoulder instead. She spins, falls behind the siege anchor. The corridor erupts. Wardens shout. Thorn's loyalists fire. Rook's people return fire. Elias steps backward into a side passage. Exactly as planned. This confrontation has already given him what he needed. Witnesses, evidence, division inside the Directorate, and confirmation that Thorn will kill his own marshal to protect the Foundation project. More importantly, reenact construction works on repaired structural states, at small scale, under pressure. That skill is going to become terrifying later. The system quietly updates. Structural necromancy proficiency increased. Memory excavation advanced. Reenact construction registered as incomplete class technique. Current safe scale, 1 structural joint. Authority radius, 14 feet. Raised node trait expanded. Junction sense evolved into network sense. Elias stops. Network sense. He reaches for the node. A faint response comes through the wall. Not location, connections. The little creature now senses how nearby structural systems link together. Doors to cables, columns to floors, floors to drains, drains to foundation channels. That is much more valuable than simple pathfinding. The node scratches through a seam and appears near Elias's hand. Its integrity has dropped to 28%. Damaged. Still functional. It rolls into his palm, then turns downward again. Always downward. This time Elias agrees. Behind him, the firefight continues. Thorn is losing control of the lower ring. Within minutes, surviving wardens will send emergency reports upward. The story will spread. Elias Voss is alive. St. Vere is malfunctioning around him. Internal containment personnel are shooting each other. And somewhere in those reports, someone will mention that the prison itself appears to be responding to its former architect. Good. Let them misunderstand. For now, Elias retrieves one broken focusing rod from the ruined siege anchor. Then another. He takes the anchor's emergency power cell, a maintenance knife, 2 access seals, and the black conduit fragment exposed from the eastern column. Harvest first. Move second. The node touches the conduit. Immediately it vibrates. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Network sense activates. A route appears. Down through the eastern column. Across an undocumented sub-foundation lattice. Past 2 sealed cavities. Then deeper than St. Vere's official lowest level. Elias studies the route. His original escape plan disappears completely. New objective. Project Palimpsest. Find what Mar installed. Find why Thorn is willing to murder Directorate officers over it. Find why ancient stone beneath the capital already knows the command rhythm Elias taught his first raised structure less than an hour ago. Our architect places the node against the wall. Take me there. The little dead structure turns. Finds a maintenance seam no official blueprint acknowledges, and opens the first hidden path downward. Elias steps inside. Behind him, St. Vere fills with the first whispers of a new reputation. Not prisoner, not architect. Something else. Something no catalog has a name for yet. He closes the hidden seam behind him and follows his raised node beneath the prison. The hidden passage beneath St. Vere is not on any blueprint Elias has ever drawn. That alone would be bad enough. The fact that the walls remember his construction crews walking directly above it makes the situation much worse. And the little raised node rolling ahead of him seems absolutely delighted by the discovery. It reaches the next junction, stops, rotates twice, then deliberately chooses the narrowest passage. Elias watches it disappear into the darkness. Apparently, gaining network sense also gives dead masonry opinions. Wonderful. The architect follows. The passage drops beneath St. Vere at an angle no legitimate foundation engineer would tolerate. Modern construction disappears within 30 yards. Cut stone gives way to enormous fitted blocks. No mortar. No visible reinforcement. Each slab is dark gray and nearly twice Elias's height. The surfaces carry shallow grooves that look decorative until he touches one. Memory floods his hand. Not human hands. Pressure, heat. Something massive pressing these stones together from multiple directions at once. Elias withdraws his fingers. Interesting. These walls were not assembled block by block. They were compressed into position. That technology does not exist anymore. At least, it is not supposed to. The raised node returns. It bumps gently against his boot, then rolls back toward the junction. Elias follows. The little thing stops beside a vertical seam and taps itself against the stone. Once, twice, pause, then 3 quick impacts. Not Elias's command rhythm, a new one. Our Necromancer crouches. Where did you learn that? The node turns toward the wall, then repeats the pattern. So much for simple behavior. It is imitating something. Elias places his palm against the seam. Memory excavation expands. Most of what he receives is ancient static. Pressure, temperature changes, distant vibrations. Then a recent event surfaces. 9 days ago. A drill touches this exact wall from the other side. 3 workers. Director Mar. Someone else. One person presses a gloved hand against the stone while Mar speaks. The wall does not preserve language cleanly, but vibration remains. Elias isolates the strongest pattern. A name. Not spoken loudly. Still recognizable. Custodian 7. Elias's eyes narrow. Not a government rank. Not military terminology. Another structure entirely. The raised node taps again. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. The same rhythm used by that unknown person against the wall 9 days ago. So the node is not inventing behavior. It is copying memory. That is more useful. And significantly more unsettling. The hidden passage opens into a cylindrical chamber. There, the scale of Project Palimpsest becomes obvious. Black conduits run through the ancient walls in organized bundles. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Modern directorate equipment has been grafted onto something far older. Mana pumps hum beside stone columns without inscriptions. Suppression relays connect to carved channels that vanish beneath the floor. Temporary scaffolds rise around an enormous sealed aperture at the chamber's center. Elias stops. The aperture is a door. At least 30 feet tall. No hinges, no mechanical lock. Its surface carries the 3 intersecting arches surrounding one vertical line, the same symbol. Except here, the design spans the entire slab. So much for a minor clue. Workers move below. 23, by Elias's count. Engineers. Security personnel. 2 containment specialists. None wear standard St. Vere insignia. Their uniforms carry plain gray shoulder plates marked with a tiny version of the 3-arch symbol. That explains the unregistered equipment. This is not simply an unauthorized directorate project. It is an organization operating inside the directorate, or above it. Elias retreats behind a stone support before anyone sees him. The node follows, then refuses to stay behind cover. It rolls toward the chamber again. Elias catches it with his foot. No. The node nudges his boot. No. Another nudge. Ridiculous. He picks it up. The system quietly responds. Raised structural node. Integrity, 26%. Path memory retained. Network sense active. Emergent behavior detected. Pattern mimicry. Evolution threshold approaching. Elias looks at the little sphere of cracked stone. Pattern mimicry. That explains the new rhythm. His companion is learning from structures around it. Not consciously, perhaps, but consistently. Excellent. Also potentially catastrophic if it starts copying the wrong thing. He slips the node inside his uniform. This time it stays still. Below, a technician calls for pressure stabilization. Another answers. Elias listens. Actual voices are far easier than wall memory. Conduit 12 is climbing again. Reduce, draw, can't. Custodian protocol requires synchronized intake, then reroute through St. Vere. Elias's expression changes by approximately nothing. Inside, his calculations accelerate. They are using St. Vere as part of this machine, not merely hiding beneath it. Drawing something through the prison. The first technician checks a readout. Upper containment instability is contaminating the feed. Another voice answers immediately. Thorne said Voss would be dead before transfer. There it is. Confirmation. The architect crouches beside the floor. His fingers touch ancient stone. Then he searches upward. St. Vere sits directly above this chamber. The modern conduits penetrate its foundation at multiple points. One passes through the eastern column Elias exposed. Another connects beneath the armory. A third climbs toward the central control spine. Suddenly, the strange modifications make sense. Not individually, as a network, the altered spatial anchor, the illegal siege anchor, the black conduits, all of them are feeding into palimpsest. The Directorate has been changing St. Vere to turn his prison into infrastructure for something else. The exact purpose remains unclear, but Elias now understands why Thorn cannot simply let him escape. An escapee is inconvenient. An architect discovering undocumented modifications to his masterpiece is dangerous. A necromancer of structures capable of interrogating those modifications is intolerable. That is almost flattering. The node trembles against his chest. Once, twice. Pause. 3. Someone below uses the same rhythm. Elias looks through the gap. A woman walks into the central chamber. No armor. Dark administrative coat. Silver hair pinned tightly behind her head. Minister Odrin Kest follows 2 steps behind. Interesting. Kest signed Elias's arrest order. Yet even he is not walking in front. The woman reaches the giant sealed aperture. She raises one gloved hand, touches the 3-arch symbol. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. The entire door pulses. The node almost jumps out of Elias's uniform. He catches it. Quietly, the woman speaks. Current draw, 38%. St. Vere, destabilized but functional. And Voss, a pause. Nobody wants that question. Kest answers. Thorn is handling it. The woman turns. Elias sees her face. He knows her. Not personally. Everyone in state construction does. Dr. Helena Varr, former chair of the Royal Infrastructure Commission, officially retired 6 years ago after an illness. Apparently, retirement now involves illegal megastructures beneath black site prisons. Good to know. Varr looks at Kest. If Voss reaches this chamber, palimpsest terminates. Kest stiffens. Destroy it? No. Then what? Everything. The minister goes quiet. Elias believes her. Not because of the dramatic delivery. Because the door behind her reacts when she speaks. A faint pressure fluctuation travels through the floor. The ancient structure recognizes her presence somehow, or recognizes the protocol she carries. Varr continues. His architectural authority was severed exactly as instructed? Yes. Every registered plan destroyed? Yes. Professional. Seals? Revoked. Personal construction ownership? Transferred to the state. For the first time tonight, Elias hears someone describe his downfall as a checklist. That matters. Varr is not discussing consequences. She is describing prerequisites. His arrest was engineered to produce a specific structural condition. Ownership severed, creations declared dead. The exact condition that awakened Necromancer of structures, Elias becomes completely still. That possibility is unpleasant. Maybe they wanted him helpless. Maybe they accidentally created the class. Or maybe someone knew precisely what would happen. Not enough evidence. No conclusions yet. He withdraws from the chamber. Quietly. This information is too valuable to gamble on curiosity. Now he needs reach. Not escape, not revenge. Reach. Because one man touching one wall at a time cannot control St. Vere fast enough. He needs a network. Conveniently, he is standing beneath one. Elias returns to the hidden junction. He removes the broken focusing rods taken from the siege anchor, then the stolen emergency power cell, then the sounding hammer. Crude components, excellent materials. He chooses a shallow cavity in the ancient wall. The raised node comes out next. It rolls into the cavity without being told. Elias pauses. The thing really is learning. He sets the focusing rods around it. 3 points. Triangular distribution. The same principle St. Vere uses for mana stabilization. Then he connects the power cell. Not directly. That would vaporize the node. Instead, he feeds current into the wall around it. The stone absorbs the vibration. The node senses the network. Elias taps the ancient block. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. His original command rhythm. Then the newer pattern. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. The node rotates. Both rhythms enter its memory. A notification forms. Compatible structural patterns detected. Raised node modification available. Elias proceeds. The power cell discharges. Hairline fractures spread through the node. For one ugly second, it looks like the little construct is about to shatter. Instead, nearby debris begins sliding toward it. Stone flakes, ancient dust, modern mortar, tiny metal fragments from conduit installation. All of it gathers around the core, not randomly. In layers, the node doubles in size, then doubles again. When the process stops, it is roughly the size of a human skull. Still spherical, still ugly. Now several metal veins cross its surface. The system updates. Structural relay node established. Integrity, 63%. Command capacity, 4. Authority extension, 40 feet through connected material. Network relay available. Pattern mimicry stabilized. Our architect stares at it. 40 feet. That is not a companion upgrade. That is infrastructure. The relay node rolls out of the cavity, stops, then taps the floor. 3 short. 1 long, 2 short. A section of wall 20 feet away answers with a faint vibration. Elias gives it another command. Find a connected junction. Do not return. The node rolls into a seam. Its new body compresses disturbingly well. Seconds later, Elias feels the connection spread. 40 feet, then another 40 through a conduit junction. Not because his personal authority grew, because the node is relaying it. There it is. Scale. Elias smiles. This time, properly. St. Vere has roughly 8,000 major structural junctions. He does not need to control all of them. He needs perhaps 100. Control the right 100 and doors become unreliable. Surveillance routes become readable. Armories become inaccessible. Elevators descend to the wrong levels. Suppression systems develop harmless delays. Emergency shutters isolate the wrong squads. A prison does not need to collapse to stop belonging to its wardens. It simply needs to become untrustworthy. Elias begins. The first relay point goes into an abandoned drainage spine. He raises 3 smaller fragments from cracked maintenance stone. Not full nodes, simple carriers. Each receives 1 command. Travel, attach, wait. The relay node sends them outward. One moves toward the lower barracks, another toward the armory. The third climbs through a vertical conduit toward central control. Authority fragments detected. 3 temporary structural servants active. 4, then 5. By the time Elias leaves the ancient junction, he has 11, none powerful, none durable. Together they create a web, 30 yards, then 60, then nearly 200. Every new junction becomes another ear, another finger, another point of leverage. Up above, St. Vere starts behaving strangely. A guard requests access to Barrack C. The door opens normally, then closes 3 seconds earlier than expected. Nobody notices. A weapons cart crosses the armory floor. 1 raised fragment records the exact load and sends it back through the network. A maintenance lift receives a command to descend. It waits 7 seconds before obeying. Annoying. Not suspicious. Central control checks Sector 7. Elias's earlier false feedback reports improving stability. Exactly as intended. Thorn sees the report and believes it. That is the beautiful part. He has already invested too deeply in the assumption that Elias is merely exploiting damage. So when St. Vere appears to stabilize, Thorn reads it as confirmation that his own response is working. He orders more teams downward, more suppression equipment, more personnel, more mass placed directly above palimpsest's modified foundation. The trap deepens. Elias feels every deployment through his expanding network. 63 wardens, then 81, then more than 100. 2 heavy suppression wagons enter the western ring. 3 emergency squads take positions around the control spine. Thorn is pouring almost the entire lower security complement into containing 1 escaped inmate, exactly where Elias wants them. Meanwhile, something unexpected happens near the damaged siege anchor. Marshal Rook moves, alive. Her shoulder is bandaged. 6 wardens accompany her, not Thorn's men. Her own. She reaches the eastern column Elias opened earlier, touches the black conduit. The wall remembers. Rook remains there for nearly a minute. Then she removes a section of her gauntlet, presses bare fingers against the repaired stone. Elias catches the contact through his network. She cannot speak to the structure. But the structure tells Elias something about her. Her pulse is slow, controlled. Her hand remains steady. Then she scratches 3 letters into the exposed mortar with a knife. M-A-R. Stops, changes direction, writes another word. Mar. A message, not for the directorate. For him, clever. Rook now suspects Director Selwyn Marr. She also correctly assumes Elias is watching through the prison somehow. The marshal adds a second line. Lauer Archive. 6 years. Then she walks away before Thorn's next squad arrives. Elias stores the information. 6 years. That matches Helena Var's official retirement. Interesting coincidence. Probably not a coincidence. He redirects 2 structural fragments toward the lower archive. No need to go personally. That is what networks are for. The relay chain reaches farther. 250 yards. 300. A quarter of St. Vere's lower levels now sit within intermittent structural contact. The system reacts. Structural influence threshold reached. Necromancer of structures proficiency increased. Active servants. 17. Relay nodes. 1. Map junctions. 219. Recognized territory. St. Vere lower ring. 12%. Territory. That word gets Elias's attention, not ownership. Recognition. The class distinguishes between legal possession and structural influence. Excellent. Governments can revoke paperwork, harder to revoke physics. The raised relay node suddenly stops transmitting. Elias turns, not destroyed, blocked. Something has touched it. He follows the last signal, through the old drainage spine, past a sealed junction, toward a disused isolation cell on sublevel 12. No active prisoner should be there. Saint Vere records the cell is empty. The floor memory disagrees. Someone has been walking inside it. One person, barefoot, same route every day. 7 steps, turn, 7 steps back. Again, again, again. Elias approaches carefully. The door has no external identification plate. Someone removed it. The nearby wall carries fresh repairs. His relay node is sitting directly outside the threshold, motionless. Not damaged, waiting. Beside it rests a small piece of chalk. Elias definitely did not give it chalk. He looks at the door. A voice comes from inside. You finally learn to listen to the walls. Elias says nothing. The speaker laughs once. Old voice. Male, dry, good. That means they made the same mistake twice. That sentence matters. Elias touches the door. Memory floods in. Hands, wardens, food trays. Repairs. Then older construction contact. 6 years ago, Helena Varr, Director Marr, Commander Thorne, and the prisoner. The same prisoner has been inside this supposedly empty cell for 6 years. Elias searches deeper. The door remembers one name spoken repeatedly during early inspections, Professor Dorian Vale. Elias knows that name too. Everyone in dungeon architecture does. Vale pioneered recursive containment theory, then disappeared during a laboratory accident. Officially dead. Apparently official records are having a terrible night. Inside, Vale speaks again. Do not open the door yet. That is unusual. Most prisoners want doors opened. Elias waits. Vale continues. If palimpsest detects the seal breaking, they will know you reached me. What are you? A pause. Then the old man answers. The person who designed the structure underneath your structure. There it is. The scale expands again. Not one prison. Not one government conspiracy. A buried architectural system predating Saint Vere, understood by at least one supposedly dead professor, exploited by officials for at least 6 years. Elias glances at the relay node. It taps the floor. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. Vale hears it. Silence from inside. Then the professor moves rapidly toward the door. His palm hits the other side. The stone captures the pressure. His voice drops. Where did that learn the custodian knock? Elias looks down at the node. No answer yet. Vale presses closer. Voss. The old man's tone changes completely. Whatever you found beneath this prison, do not let it complete that pattern against the central gate. Interesting. Why? Another pause. Longer this time. Because the last structure that answered it was a city. Elias studies the door. Not enough context, too dramatic to trust, but useful. He reaches into his uniform and removes the partial palimpsest survey stolen from Marr's vault. He slides it beneath the cell door. Vale pulls it inside. Paper unfolds. Nothing. Then the old man starts laughing. Not happily. Of course. What? They are not trying to open palimpsest. Elias's eyes sharpen. Vale pushes the page back. A section has been circled, one of the conduit routes. The line does not terminate at the giant aperture. It continues upward, through St. Vere. Through the capital's municipal foundation grid, far beyond the prison, Vale taps the paper from inside. They are using your prison as a calibration model. Elias looks at the route. The implication arrives immediately. St. Vere is not the final structure. It is the test structure. Every modification, every conduit, every stabilization experiment, every load transfer. All of it teaches palimpsest how a modern city behaves. The hidden system is learning architecture, exactly like his raised node. Different scale, same principle. That is not good. Footsteps appear through Elias's network. Many, Thorne's squads. Closing on sublevel 12. Someone noticed the relay anomalies. Finally. Elias takes the survey. The node rolls against his boot. Vale speaks through the door. If you want answers, keep me officially dead. Elias turns away. That can be arranged. He does not free Vale. Not yet. Instead, he places 3 raised fragments into the cell's exterior joints, 1 above, 2 below. He gives them a delayed command. Remember, closed. Even if central control attempts to open this door, the joints will reinforce the sealed state for several seconds. Small protection. Enough for now. Then Elias sends the relay node back into the wall. Its network expands. Fragments scatter. Doors report false positions. Maintenance routes change availability. One elevator carrying Thorne's men stops 2 floors too high. Another descends 1 floor too low. A suppression squad enters a corridor that quietly seals behind them. Nobody is hurt. Everyone is delayed. Confused, separated, Saint Ver is becoming unreliable, exactly where Elias needs it to be. His recognized territory climbs 15%, 17, 19, 21. The Directorate built its entire containment doctrine on one assumption. The building is neutral. That assumption is now dead. Elias reaches a central junction connecting 4 lower sectors. He places both palms against the wall. His relay node answers from somewhere deep inside the network. 17 structural servants answer with it, then 20, 24. Several newly cracked pieces have raised themselves around existing relay paths without direct instruction. The class reacts. Distributed structural network established. Temporary command ceiling increased. Recognized territory, 26%. Elias sends one instruction across the entire lower ring. Not collapse, not attack. Listen, every connected fragment stops moving. Every wall begins collecting contact. Every floor begins tracing steps. Every repaired seam records maintenance access. The prison becomes an intelligence network. Thorn cannot hold a meeting without leaning against Elias's informants. Mar cannot visit a hidden chamber without walking across Elias's witnesses. And palimpsest cannot draw power through Saint Ver without passing through structures now beginning to recognize another authority. Our necromancer removes the black conduit fragment from his pocket. The metal pulses faintly. Once, twice, pause, 3. His relay node answers somewhere inside the wall. Pattern mimicry. Vale's warning returns. Do not complete the pattern against the central gate. Elias does not intend to. Not before understanding what it does. But now he knows something else. The pattern is not merely a passcode. Structures teach it to one another. That means someone did not simply carve the 3-arch symbol beneath Saint Ver. Someone planted a language. And his companion is already learning how to speak it. The sound of approaching boots reaches him through 6 separate corridors. Thorn is closing the net. Good. Let him. Elias presses the conduit fragment into a hidden wall cavity, then seals 3 raised fragments around it, a decoy, a deliberate one. The fragment carries Mar's touch, palimpsest's resonance, the custodian rhythm, everything Thorn desperately wants contained. Elias routes the cavity toward an abandoned inspection chamber. Then he adjusts the stress recorder network. Central control receives a fresh anomaly, unauthorized palimpsest resonance detected. Sublevel 9. Thorn sees it within seconds. His footsteps change direction. More than 50 wardens follow, exactly as expected. The Directorate begins concentrating men, suppression equipment, and emergency authority around a completely empty chamber. The bait is convincing because the structure itself is reporting it. And buried far beneath them, the real palimpsest network continues humming. Elias turns toward the opposite corridor. Toward the lower archive Rook marked. Toward 6 years of hidden records. Toward whatever happened when Helena Var disappeared from public life and Dorian Vale officially died. His relay node emerges beside him, larger than before. A second ring of metal now circles its surface. The system offers one quiet update. Pattern mimicry complete. Next evolution condition detected. Requires contact with primary structural memory source. Elias looks down. The node rotates, then points directly beneath his feet, not toward Saint Ver, toward the giant sealed structure below it. The architect pockets Rook's clue, retrieves the palimpsest survey, and starts walking. Behind him, Commander Thorn sends half the prison chasing a wall Elias taught to lie. Ahead, the lower archive waits. And somewhere beneath both of them, an ancient structure is teaching his first undead building block, a language that should have disappeared before the capital existed. The lower archive contains 6 years of records someone tried very hard to make look boring. Elias immediately knows that means they are important. No dramatic vault, no legendary seal. No armed guards standing outside. Just a rectangular records room beneath an abandoned maintenance level, protected by one ordinary Directorate lock and enough bureaucratic camouflage to put a dragon to sleep. The relay node rolls up beside his boot. It bumps the door once, then twice. Elias looks down. No, the node bumps it a 3rd time. Apparently, pattern mimicry has also taught it impatience. Our architect uses Marshal Rook's stolen access clue instead. The outer lock recognizes one of the security seals he took earlier. Green light, the door opens, dust covers everything inside. Shelves stretch from floor to ceiling, boxes, inspection ledgers, foundation reports, personnel transfers, equipment disposal forms. Hundreds of records designed to become invisible simply by being painfully ordinary. Perfect hiding place. Elias closes the door behind him, then he touches the floor. His structural network spreads outward. More than 30 raised fragments now occupy Saint Ver's lower ring. The relay node connects them across walls, drains, support columns, and maintenance channels. Recognized territory has climbed past 30%. Not permanent control, not even close, but enough that every major approach toward this archive produces pressure information. Thorn is still concentrating forces around the decoy chamber. Good. Rook is moving independently through the eastern service ring. Better. And someone else has just entered St. Vere from above. That contact pattern gets Elias's attention. 8 people, light steps, no heavy armor. They avoid main corridors. They do not use directorate checkpoints. Every door opens before they touch it. The prison recognizes their credentials at a level higher than Thorn's. Interesting. Elias keeps that information. Then he turns toward the shelves. Rook gave him 2 clues. Mar. 6 years. He starts there. 6 years ago, Director Selwyn Marr officially served as Deputy Commissioner for Civil Fortification. Nothing related to St. Vere. Helena Varr retired that same year. Professor Dorian Vale supposedly died. 3 unrelated events. According to public records, Elias pulls the first archive box. Routine maintenance. Second, foundation recalibration. Third, municipal stress mapping. There. A report signed by Marr. Project classification disguised as urban subsidence prevention. Elias reads the first page, then the second, then he stops. The map underneath is not a map of St. Vere. It is the capital. Thousands of structural lines spread beneath streets, government buildings, aqueducts, transit tunnels, military bunkers, dungeon barriers, and residential foundations. St. Vere sits near the center, not geometrically, functionally. Black lines converge there from nearly every major district. Elias places the map flat on the table. He removes the partial palimpsest survey. The conduit routes align, perfectly. The prison is not simply feeding the buried system. It is a hub, a calibration heart inserted between something ancient beneath the capital and everything modern built above it. The raised node rolls onto the table. It touches one black line, then another. Its metal veins brighten faintly. Network sense activates without a command. The construct rotates toward the wall, then toward the ceiling, then downward. It can feel the roots. Not all of them. Enough. A message forms quietly behind Elias's eyes. External structural network detected. Scale exceeds current recognition threshold. Potential connected structures. Indeterminate. Authority unavailable. Memory access possible through valid relay. Elias reads that twice. Memory access, not authority, still ridiculous. If St. Vere touches the capital's structural network, and his class can communicate through remembered physical connections, then theoretically he does not need to stand inside a building to interrogate it. He only needs a continuous structural path. Our Necromancer does not celebrate. He reaches for the next file, because power without mechanism is how idiots die. The second report explains more. Palimpsest is described as a foundational interpretation engine, not a weapon, not officially. Its purpose is to read accumulated mechanical memory from inhabited structures. Stress, movement, repairs, human contact, mana flow. Exactly what Elias's hidden class does. He keeps reading. Ancient civilizations apparently discovered that sufficiently old structures retain what the report calls residual occupancy impressions. Most modern scholars dismiss the effect as passive mana staining. Vale did not, neither did Varr. Their research shows that buildings do not merely retain energy, they retain state memory. A wall remembers being whole. A gate remembers being open. A bridge remembers load. A prison remembers prisoners. Elias slowly looks at the relay node. So his class is not creating this principle. It is accessing something that was always there. That changes everything. The system interface stirs. Hidden class data reconciliation in progress. New conceptual layer recognized. Structural death is not destruction. Structural death occurs when purpose, ownership, or continuity is severed. Elias becomes still. There. The first real law. A building does not need to collapse to die. St. Vere died because its creator was severed from it. The government did not destroy the prison. It changed the relationship, defining what the prison was. His hidden class awakened because Elias understands structures deeply enough to recognize their corpse state after institutional. Ownership kills their original identity. That is wildly specific, far too specific to feel accidental. He opens another file. This one contains Vale's handwriting, only fragments. Most pages have been removed. One surviving diagram shows 3 stages: living structure, dead structure, recalled structure. Elias's attention locks onto the third term, recalled, not raised. The diagram shows a wall passing through 3 states: built, abandoned, then temporarily restored to an earlier configuration through residual memory. Reenact construction, his supposedly unregistered technique. Vale theorized it 6 years ago. The architect's expression hardens. Now, the problem is no longer that someone understands his hidden class. Someone understood its underlying mechanism before Elias ever awakened it. He turns the page. A symbol fills the center. 3 arches, 1 line. The same mark beneath Saint Ver. Below it sits one phrase. Palimpsest protocol memory is load. Elias's thumb stops. Memory is load. He looks back at the modern conduit maps, then at the city network, then at the ancient foundation survey. The pieces connect. Palimpsest does not merely read buildings. It places remembered structural states back onto them as artificial load, not physical weight, historical configuration. A wall can be forced to remember being broken. A sealed gate can remember being open. A fortress can remember the moment before reinforcement. A bridge can remember the day its central support was unfinished. If that remembered state becomes mechanically valid, every cage in the city can fail without being attacked. Elias understands why the government wants this, and why someone buried it under his prison. His face remains calm. His plan changes completely. Originally, he needs to survive, then gather evidence, then take control of Saint Ver. No longer enough. If Palimpsest can broadcast remembered structural states across the capital, whoever controls it can disable every defensive system in the city simultaneously. Prisons, bunkers, dungeon seals, royal shelters, mana towers, everything. And Saint Ver is the calibration model because no living architect understands controlled failure better than Elias Voss. They used his life's work to teach an ancient machine how perfect containment breaks. That is personal. He still does not waste time being angry. There will be time for that after the mechanism is understood. The relay node suddenly rolls off the table. Hard. It hits the floor. Then moves toward a shelf. Elias follows. The construct stops beside a sealed evidence drawer. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. Custodian rhythm. The drawer has no directorate label. Elias kneels, touches it. The metal remembers Helena Var, Mar, Vale, and someone else. The same unknown gloved hand from the hidden foundation passage, Custodian 7. The drawer opens through mechanical pressure rather than magic. Inside is a flat slate of ancient dark stone, no writing, no visible interface. The node reacts instantly. Its entire body vibrates. Metal veins brighten. The system warning arrives immediately. Primary structural memory source detected. Companion evolution condition satisfied. Unsafe synchronization risk. Elias takes the node before it can touch the slate. It keeps rotating in his palm, trying to reach it. No, the thing actually stops. That is new. Then it rotates back toward him, almost offended. Elias examines the slate. The material matches the giant aperture beneath Saint Ver. Same density. Same faint temperature difference. Same impossible lack of tool marks. He does not touch it directly. Instead, he takes the broken-sounding hammerhead, places it against the slate, then touches the hammer. Indirect contact. Memory enters. Not an image. A network. Massive. Stone corridors spreading beneath a city that does not yet exist. Structures connecting farther than Elias can perceive. Towers above, vaults below. Reservoirs. Transit shafts. Containment chambers. Entire districts built as one continuous system. Then people vanish. Not suddenly. Gradually. Footsteps become rarer. Repairs stop. Doors remain closed. Water pressure dies. Heat fades. A city becomes structurally dead long before its walls collapse. Then one final sensation. A synchronized command, traveling through everything. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. The custodian rhythm. The entire ancient city changes state. Elias releases the hammer. The memory stops. He breathes once. Slowly. Vale's warning finally makes sense. The last structure that answered the pattern was a city. Not because the rhythm opens one door, it addresses a network. The symbol of 3 arches and 1 line is not a faction emblem. It is an architectural hierarchy marker. 3 distributed support domains. 1 governing spine. The command pattern calls the governing structure. That is why his node keeps copying it. Network Sense recognizes it as the oldest structural language in the environment. And Palimpsest is not simply a hidden machine. It is part of the dead city beneath the capital. Saint Ver was built on its central spine. Elias looks at the city map again. Modern streets align with ancient load routes. Government towers sit above old structural nodes. The royal palace occupies the position of a former central complex. Half the capital has unknowingly been built onto the skeleton of another city. That is the reveal. Not a weapon hidden under one prison. A dead metropolis beneath a living one, and someone has been reconnecting the two. The system responds. Major environmental truth recognized. Structural necromancy framework expanded. New function unlocked. Ancestral state. Elias reads the description through sensation rather than text. Memory excavation reads what touched a structure. Reenact construction recalls how one joint once existed. Ancestral state goes deeper. It identifies a structure's previous functional identity. A prison wing built over an ancient water channel does not possess only one past, it possesses layers. A rebuilt wall remembers earlier walls. A palace built into older foundations inherits buried geometry. Architecture becomes geological. Cities become stacks of corpses. That is completely absurd. Elias likes it. The node vibrates again. This time he lets it approach the ancient slate. Carefully, one touch. The reaction is immediate. The relay node freezes. Every metal vein across its body turns dark. Cracks spread. Elias reaches for it, then stops. The system does not report destruction. Synchronization in progress. Pattern mimicry converting. Network sense restructuring. The slate pulses. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. The node answers. But instead of repeating the rhythm, it taps a different sequence. 3 short, 1 long. 2 short. Elias's rhythm. Its first learned command language. The ancient slate answers with the custodian knock. The node answers with Elias's. Back and forth. Old network. New master. Neither yielding. Interesting. The construct's surface rearranges. Metal veins sink inward. New lines appear across the stone. Not random grooves anymore. A miniature floor plan. St. Vair's lower ring. The node has begun mapping its territory physically onto itself. A notification appears. Structural relay node evolved. New form. Archive heart. Integrity. 82%. Primary trait. Distributed memory. Secondary trait. Network translation. Pattern mimicry replaced. The archive heart can now distinguish command languages instead of blindly copying them. Much safer. More importantly, it can translate between structural systems without allowing one to overwrite the other. That changes the board. Elias takes the heart into his palm. It feels heavier, not physically. Structurally, as if dozens of connected corridors are pressing through it, he touches the ancient slate again. This time through the companion. Ancestral state activates. The archive room disappears from his awareness. Not visually, functionally. He feels what existed here before St. Vair. A transit artery, large enough for thousands of people. Beyond it, 4 enormous structural branches spread toward what are now separate districts of the capital. One route remains active. Modern conduits have reopened it. Palimpsest. Another route is dormant. A third is broken. The fourth occupied. Elias's eyes narrow. Not physically occupied by people, structurally occupied. Something is issuing commands from another ancient node. Not St. Vair. Not Palimpsest's main gate, far across the capital. Someone else is already inside the buried network. The system cannot identify them. But the archive heart can sense their command signature. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. Custodian. Active. Elias closes his fingers around the companion. New opponent. Or new layer. Either way, the mission expands again. He removes 3 files. Vale's diagram. Mars city map. The Palimpsest conduit report. Everything else stays. If this archive is discovered empty, suspicion becomes certainty. Better to make it look untouched. The archive heart rolls across the table. Without instruction, it taps one cabinet, then another. Network translation. The room tells Elias which drawers were opened most recently. Helena Var visited 4 days ago. Mar came 3 days ago. Thorn never came here. That distinction matters. Thorn is a field executor. Mar is deeper. Var is deeper still. And Custodian 7 may not answer to any of them. Above, St. Vair suddenly shudders. Elias feels the entire lower ring tense. His structural servants report a massive authority pulse entering from the surface. The 8 light-footed intruders have reached central control. Every directorate lock on 3 levels switches allegiance at once. Thorn's access disappears. Rook's disappears too. Someone just took command of the prison administratively. The hidden opposition is moving. Right on schedule, Elias routes perception through the archive heart. 100 points of pressure become one coherent map. He follows the newcomers. 7 spread outward. 1 remains at central control. A hand touches Elias's original master console. The wall remembers skin pressure. Female, gloved until the last second, then bare fingertips. Helena Var. Of course, she enters an override sequence. Not St. Vair's, Palimpsest's. Deep beneath Elias, black conduits activate. The ancient foundation answers, and for the first time, his recognized territory starts shrinking. 32%. 30. 27. Not because the directorate is reclaiming it. Something older is. The walls begin receiving commands in custodian language. His raised fragments twitch. Several turn toward the foundation. The archive heart vibrates violently. Network translation strains to keep Elias's command patterns separate. There is the danger. Palimpsest can overwrite structural allegiance, not legal ownership, memory priority. If an old enough structure remembers a previous governing system more strongly than Elias's commands, his necromancy loses leverage. That becomes the real battlefield. Not man against government, not prisoner against prison. Architectural memory against architectural memory. Elias recalculates immediately. He abandons the plan to gradually seize all of St. Vere. Too slow. Var can overwrite sectors faster than he can raise them individually. He needs one central mechanism capable of broadcasting his own state across the network. A counter-palimpsest. Something that forces connected structures to remember Elias's version of themselves. The idea is incomplete, dangerously incomplete. But the principle is already there. Reenact construction. Ancestral state. Archive heart. 3 pieces. He takes the broken focusing rod still hanging from his belt, then draws a rough triangular frame in dust on the table. 3 relay points, 1 governing node. Same geometry as the ancient symbol, but the vertical spine is reversed, not downward. Upward, a counter network. The archive heart rolls into the center of the sketch. Elias watches it. There, that will be the tool. Not ready today, not even close. But if he can build 3 high-capacity structural relays around a central memory core, he may be able to impose a recalled state across an entire connected complex. A structure-scale resurrection field. He scratches measurements beside the diagram. Material requirements. Load limits, synchronization delays, fail-safes. This is not a miraculous power-up, it is engineering, which means it can be finished. Later, under better conditions, preferably before someone tries to overwrite a city. A violent pulse runs through St. Vere. 3 of Elias's fragments go silent. Then 5. The hidden network is advancing. Helena Var watches a black representation of the prison appear across the central control chamber. Minister Kess stands behind her. Director Mar arrives through a secured lift. Commander Thorne enters several minutes later, furious. You shut out my command authority. Var does not turn. You lost operational control. I contained Voss. You concentrated more than half the lower personnel around an empty chamber. Thorne goes silent. Mar looks at the structural map. Dark points spread through St. Vere. Elias's influence. More than anyone expected. Mar's face tightens. How many nodes? Unknown. Destroy the lower ring. Kess stares at him. There are prisoners down there. Mar does not care. Var raises one hand. No. Even Mar stops. She enlarges the map. One dark pattern appears differently from the others. The archive heart. Var studies it. Her expression changes for the first time. Not fear. Recognition. He made a translator. Mar looks at her. A what? He should not be able to do that yet. Yet. That word is useful. Very useful. Var knows progression stages. She knows what his class is expected to become, which means Elias's awakening was not an accident. Not completely. The confirmation reaches him indirectly. The central control wall remembers her statement. His network carries the vibration through surviving fragments. The archive heart reconstructs enough of the pattern for Elias to understand. He remains perfectly calm. Then he changes one item on his mental list. Helena Var moves above Mar, above Thorne, possibly above Kest, and she expected Necromancer of structures to exist. There is no reason to confront her yet. Questions are more valuable while the enemy believes they still own the answers. Elias sends a short command through the heart. All remaining fragments detach from exposed routes. Hide inside load-bearing seams. Stop transmitting. St. Vere goes dark to him. Recognized territory drops from 25% to 8%. Var sees the same collapse on her display. Thorne smiles. He is losing control. Var does not. No. She studies the vanished nodes. He is learning concealment. Exactly. Our architect takes the archive heart and leaves the lower archive. He does not head toward the surface. He does not head toward Palimpsest's central gate either. Instead, he chooses the broken ancient route leading west beneath the capital, the one no modern conduit has restored. The archive heart translates the dead city's structural memory and reveals a path, an abandoned artery, collapsed in 3 places. Disconnected from Var's active network. Perfect. Elias places one hand against the first ancient support block. Ancestral state opens. The stone remembers when the corridor was whole, not enough to restore it. Enough to show how. Reenact construction responds. 1 joint. Still his safe limit. He recalls a broken support into its earlier alignment for less than 2 seconds. Plenty. The load shifts, a narrow opening appears. The archive heart rolls through first, then turns back, waiting. Behind Elias, Palimpsest claims another section of St. Vere. Ahead waits the skeleton of a dead city, a city whose memories may reach beneath every important structure in the capital. And now Elias finally understands what Necromancer of Structures truly means. Walls are not his soldiers. Buildings are not his undead. Those are merely pieces. His real corpses are systems whose purposes have ended. Prisons, fortresses, tunnels, districts, cities. Anything built by human hands can die. Anything dead can remember. And if Elias can learn how those memories connect, then one day he will not need to break a cage from the inside. He will simply remind the entire cage of the moment before it was ever closed. The archive heart taps the ancient floor. 3 short, 1 long, 2 short. Elias follows it into the dead city. St. Vere loses 9% of its lower structural authority in less than 4 minutes. Elias feels every percentage point disappear. 1 corridor goes silent, then a drainage spine, then 2 support junctions near the central control ring. Palimpsest is not chasing him with soldiers anymore. It is erasing his network. That is much more dangerous. The archive heart rolls beside him through the dead transit artery beneath the prison. Its new surface map keeps changing as connections vanish. Thin engraved lines fade. Others appear. Some retreat toward the center. One stubborn route keeps pushing west. Elias watches the pattern while walking. No panic, no wasted motion, just mathematics. See, a network does not need to destroy every node to win. It only needs to break the right connections. Helena Var understands that. She is not targeting Elias's strongest fragments. She is cutting bridges. Every time 2 clusters become isolated, his effective range collapses far faster than the raw damage suggests. Clean work. Annoyingly clean. Our architect touches the ancient wall. Ancestral state activates. The corridor remembers being part of a functioning city, not this narrow ruin, a much larger transit system. 3 routes once intersect here. 1 has collapsed completely. 1 is buried under St. Vere's western foundation. The 3rd continues toward the capital. Elias chooses the 3rd. The archive heart reaches the next junction. Stops, then begins tapping. Not Elias's rhythm. Not the custodian knock either. Something new. 2 short. 2 long. 1 short. Elias looks down. The heart repeats it, then projects a faint structural impression through the floor. Blocked route. Alternative path. It has started inventing compression codes. Excellent. That means network translation is no longer merely translating existing structural languages. It is developing one optimized for itself. That is exactly how systems become dangerous and useful. The hidden class notices. Archive heart autonomous indexing increased. Evolution pressure detected. Requirement incomplete. Required condition. Multi-network convergence under active conflict. Elias stores that. Not now. Later. Above, St. Vere convulses again. Helena Var has finished taking administrative control. Every official lock answers her. Every registered suppression array reports directly to Palimpsest. Commander Thorn has recovered enough authority to deploy forces again, and Director Mar is doing something worse. He is emptying entire prison sectors, not evacuating, repositioning. The floor memories tell Elias. Hundreds of inmates are being moved toward the central rings, 1 block after another. High-risk prisoners, mana predators, spatial offenders, combat awakeners. People St. Vere was specifically built to keep separated. Elias stops walking. That is not crowd control. That is ammunition. He reaches for the surviving fragments hidden inside load-bearing seams. 8 answer immediately. 3 more after a delay. 2 do not answer at all. Through them, he catches pieces of movement. Wardens opening isolation cells. Suppression collars being loosened. Prisoners being driven toward selected routes. Then 1 order vibrates through a security wall. Thorn's voice. Release Section Black if Voss breaches the inner ring. Elias's expression stays flat. Section Black contains prisoners nobody transports during emergencies, people whose powers are considered worse than death sentences. Thorn is willing to unleash them inside St. Vere. Not because he believes he can control them, because he believes Elias cannot. That is the first layer making its final move. Crude, brutal, predictable. Then another memory reaches Elias. Helena Var speaking at central control. Do not interfere with the release. Mar turns toward her. That many anomalies will destabilize the calibration. Exactly. The architect slows. There. 2nd layer. Var wants chaos too, but for a different reason. Palimpsest learns through structural stress. More prisoners means more movement, more violence, more doors opening, more barriers failing, more emergency repairs, more structural states for the ancient system to record. Thorn thinks he is creating a battlefield. Var is creating training data. That changes the board again. Elias removes the city map from his coat. He places it against the wall. The archive heart touches the paper. Network translation connects modern routes to ancient ones. The capital appears in pieces, not visually. As pressure, relationships, St. Vere sits in the center of a much larger buried system. Palimpsest has active lines reaching north, east, and southeast. The western route remains dead. That is the route Elias is currently following. Good. If Var controls the restored network, then fighting her inside restored territory is stupid. He needs an independent backbone. An old route Palimpsest cannot easily overwrite. The dead transit artery is exactly that. Our Necromancer changes the plan. He will not defend his existing network. He will abandon most of it, then build a second one where Var has no authority. Painful, necessary. The archive heart rotates toward him as if sensing the decision. Elias kneels, touches its surface. Withdraw. The heart vibrates. Across St. Vere, hidden fragments begin moving. Not all. Some stay. Deliberately. Decoys. Others crawl through joints toward western structural lines. A dozen tiny undead architecture fragments retreat through cracks nobody can see. 3 are caught by Palimpsest. Their command patterns vanish. 1 is crushed when a suppression shutter closes. 2 reach the old western foundation. Then 4. Then 7. The archive heart's surface begins redrawing itself. St. Vere shrinks. The dead city expands. Recognized territory. St. Vere, 6%. Ancient western artery, 14%. Elias prefers the second number. The government can keep the prison. For now. He wants the skeleton underneath it. The tunnel opens into a massive junction chamber. Collapsed pillars lie everywhere. Ancient rail channels cut through the floor. At the center sits a broken structural pylon. The thing must once have connected several city districts. Now only half remains. Perfect candidate. Elias approaches, touches it. Memory detonates through his arm. Crowds. Vehicles. Maintenance crews. Heavy cargo. Thousands of daily crossings. Then evacuation. Then abandonment. Then silence. This pylon was not merely support. It was a routing heart. He studies the fracture. Reenact construction can recall one joint safely. The pylon has hundreds. Too large, so he does not restore it. He builds around it. The broken focusing rods come out first, then salvaged conduit wire. Then 3 directorate access seals, not for authentication, for mana conductivity. The archive heart rolls into the base of the pylon. Elias places 1 relay fragment at each surviving structural branch. 3 points. 1 center, the reversed architecture he sketched in the lower archive. A counter network. Still crude, still tiny, but real. He activates ancestral state. The pylon remembers being whole. He does not force the entire memory forward. He isolates only the relationships. Which branch carries pressure to which branch? Where the original governing spine sat. How information like vibration traveled through the structure. Then he feeds those relationships into the archive heart. The companion trembles violently. The system responds. Distributed memory overload approaching. Network translation attempting convergence. Elias keeps going. 1 ancient route. 1 modern fragment network. 1 partially recalled pylon. 3 systems. Active conflict. There is the missing condition. Evolution pressure spikes. The archive heart cracks. Not damage. Expansion. 3 narrow stone bands unfold from its surface. They extend toward the relay fragments. Touch. Lock. The entire arrangement becomes 1 connected device, no longer a rolling node. Not temporarily. The heart has anchored itself. The notification arrives. Evolution preparation initiated. Provisional form detected. Sepulchre core. Completion unavailable. Required components. Stable triad relays. Governing spine memory. External hostile network contact. Elias studies the name. Sepulchre core. Dramatic. But accurate enough. The companion is trying to become a command center for dead structures. That will matter later. For now, the incomplete form gives 1 new function. Network. Echo. Elias tests it. The sepulchre core touches the ancient pylon's remembered routing state, then broadcasts a harmless pulse through the western artery. The vibration travels. 50 yards. 100. 300. Farther. It fades near the first major collapse. Still impressive. Then something answers, not palimpsest. Another dormant pylon. Farther west. The echo wakes a memory. That pylon sends back its old location relationship. Then another answers beyond it. And another. 1 by 1, the dead city starts mapping itself through echoes. Elias's awareness expands, not control. Topology. He feels the buried shape of entire districts, tunnels beneath markets, reservoirs beneath residential blocks, old defense corridors under government squares, massive structural nodes sleeping beneath modern towers. The capital is sitting on a corpse far larger than St. Vere. And almost nobody knows. The scope becomes absurd. So Elias does what he always does when faced with absurd scale. He divides it into manageable sections. First objective, secure the western artery. Second, create 3 permanent relay points. Third, use those relays to reach St. Vere from outside palimpsest's command hierarchy. Fourth, build the counter network properly. Simple enough. Then Network Echo returns something unexpected. Footsteps. Modern. Far down the western artery. Someone else is inside the dead city. Elias immediately shuts down the pulse. The sepulchre core folds its stone bands inward. Archive heart form returns. Good, portable again, for now. He places one hand on the wall. Contact memory. Recent. 6 people. Moving carefully. No directorate boots. No prison equipment. Light gear. One carries a heavy rectangular object. Their path starts beneath the Western Civic District, not St. Vere, so they entered from somewhere else. Another buried access point. The hidden layer is already broader than the prison. Elias moves toward them. Quietly, the archive heart rolls beside him. It now stops at every junction before he does. Listens, indexes, chooses, definitely becoming more independent. Several minutes later, voices carry through the ancient corridor. Signal dropped. Find it again. Custodian 7 wants confirmation. Elias stops. There, Custodian 7. The unknown figure from the Foundation memory, not merely a title inside St. Vere. Someone is actively commanding field teams across the capital. A woman answers. Palimpsest is already online. Why are we hunting one rogue signal? Another voice. Because it responded in the Western Dead Zone. Silence. Then, nothing responds in the Western Dead Zone. Exactly. The team moves closer. Elias counts weapons by sound. 4 light crossbows, 1 mana detector, 1 containment case. 6 people, probably specialists, not soldiers. He could ambush them, bad use of resources, information first. He places the archive heart against the floor. Network translation. The heart listens to their step patterns. Then creates a short code. Too short, too long. 1 short, blocked route, alternative path. Elias almost smiles. The companion already has a plan. He follows it. A side corridor loops around the incoming team. Ancient geometry gives him height. He reaches a collapsed service balcony above them. Now he can see. Plain gray uniforms, 3 arch insignia. Same as palimpsest workers, but their shoulder marks differ, not numbered ranks. Geometric marks, 1 arch, 2 arches. 3. The leader carries all 3. Organizational structure. Good. The heavy rectangular object turns out to be a portable memory sampler. They place it against the ancient floor. The device hums. One technician studies the reading. Fresh command residue. The leader kneels. Voss? Unknown. Var said his class has not reached city-scale propagation. Interesting. Another confirmation. They know his progression. The technician adjusts the sampler. Pattern isn't custodian. Then what? New language. Elias looks at the archive heart. It's invented code. The companion has created a command signature the hidden organization does not recognize. That is a huge advantage. The leader stands. Collect the residue. Send it to the Meridian office. There. A name. Not generic. Meridian office. Custodian 7 apparently operates through a specific organization. The hidden layer finally gains shape. Elias keeps listening. Direct transmission? No. St. Vere is unstable. Because of Voss? Because Var accelerated calibration. One technician lowers his voice. Custodian 7 approved that? The leader looks at him. No answer. The silence matters. So Helena Var and Custodian 7 are not necessarily aligned. Excellent. Multiple factions inside the hidden structure. That is leverage. The team collects samples, then turns back. Elias lets them leave. He could kill them. Pointless. Better to follow their route later. The archive heart stores their contact signatures. All 6. Especially the leader. A woman named Etta Sorn, according to the others. 3 arch rank. Field authority. First concrete operative tied directly to the Meridian office. Good. Now the hidden layer has a face, not the top. Enough. Above them, the city starts changing. Elias feels it through the ancient network. Heavy movement near St. Vere. Then alarms. Then gates opening. Thorn has begun releasing prisoners. The first wave hits the central ring. Walls absorb impacts. Floors record chaotic movement. Suppression barriers cycle repeatedly. Exactly the data Var wants. Palimpsest begins feeding faster. The black conduit network brightens. Ancient nodes beneath the prison wake one after another. The system pressure reaches the western artery. Finally, hostile network contact. The archive heart jerks. Its surface splits into 3 bands again. Sepulchre core preparation resumes automatically. The heart anchors itself against the pylon. Palimpsest pushes a command into the western route. Custodian language. Once, twice, Pause. 3. The pylon remembers the ancient command. For one dangerous second, it begins aligning toward palimpsest. Elias touches the core, sends his own rhythm. 3 short. 1 long, 2 short. The structure hesitates between 2 remembered authorities. There, the battlefield, exactly as expected. The archive heart vibrates. Network translation cannot simply block the older language, so it does something better. It translates both, then separates intention from syntax. Palimpsest's command means submit root to governing spine. Elias's command means preserve local connection under current relay authority. The core compares them, chooses his. Not because his language is older, because it is more recent. Because the dead Western artery has not belonged to palimpsest for centuries, current memory wins against ancestral hierarchy. The hostile command collapses, the pylon remains his, the system responds immediately. External hostile network contact satisfied. Sepulchre core evolution preparation, 2 of 3 conditions complete. Remaining requirement, stable triad relays. Elias removes his hand. Perfect. Now he knows how to finish it. 3 relays, 3 fixed structural hearts around 1 governing memory. Not tonight, but soon, very soon. St. Ver shakes hard enough that dust falls from the tunnel ceiling. The released prisoners are spreading. One suppression block fails, then another. Thorne's men retreat inward. Rook's unit moves civilians and non-combat staff towards safer sectors. VAR continues calibration. Mar authorizes lethal containment. Everyone is committing, every piece moving forward, exactly when Elias wants them overextended. The architect pulls out the city map. He marks 3 locations along the Western Ancient Network. 1 beneath the Civil Records Quarter, 1 beneath the Old Aqueduct, 1 beneath the Western Gatehouse. Perfect triad. Those will become his relays. Then he marks St. Ver, center, not of his network, of theirs. That distinction is important. He folds the map. The archive heart detaches from the pylon. Portable form restored. Before it leaves, it taps the ancient stone. 2 short. 2 long. 1 short. The pylon answers. Same rhythm. The companion has taught its first independent command code to a second structure. Elias watches the response. That is the small event. Almost nothing. 1 dead pylon repeating 1 invented rhythm. But our architect understands immediately. He no longer needs every structure to remember him. He only needs them to remember each other. The machine is finally ready to grow without his hand touching every wall. Above, St. Ver descends into controlled chaos. Below, palimpsest pushes harder. Across the western dead city, 1 ancient pylon quietly teaches another how to ignore the custodian language. And Elias Voss starts walking toward the first point of his triad. The first relay goes beneath the Civil Records Quarter. The second goes under an aqueduct older than the kingdom's current dynasty. The third sits directly beneath the Western Gatehouse, where 5 generations of engineers have unknowingly repaired modern fortifications on top of a dead city's command spine. 3 points, 1 buried network. And somewhere beneath St. Ver, Helena Var is still convinced Elias Voss is fighting for control of a prison. That misunderstanding is about to become expensive. The archive heart rests inside the center of the first relay frame. Its stone bands unfold, 1 toward the ancient pylon, 1 toward a modern storm drain support, 1 toward a fractured foundation line connecting both. Elias kneels beside it. His hands are black with dust. His prison uniform is torn. He has no registered rank, no blueprint archive, no government clearance, and technically no legal identity anymore. Yet beneath him sits enough dead infrastructure to reach nearly half the capital. Funny how paperwork works. The first relay activates. Not with light, with memory. The aqueduct remembers pressure. The ancient artery remembers traffic. The civil foundation remembers buildings above it settling over decades. Those impressions converge inside the archive heart. 1 route becomes 3. 3 become dozens. Elias feels the network stretch. 400 yards, 800. More. Then resistance hits. Palimpsest. Custodian language travels through the buried eastern grid and presses toward him. Once, twice. Pause. 3. The old command tries to declare the connected structures subordinate to the governing spine beneath St. Ver. Elias places 1 hand on the relay. His own rhythm answers. 3 short. 1 long, 2 short. The 2 command systems collide inside dead stone. The relay groans. Cracks race across the frame. The archive heart translates both instructions. Ancient command. Return to central governance. Elias's command. Preserve local memory hierarchy. Palimpsest has age. He has relevance. The structure hesitates. Then the aqueduct sides with Elias. Not sentimentally, mechanically. Its current identity is no longer part of the ancient city. It is an aqueduct. Maintained by modern engineers. Repaired 17 times. Redirected twice. Palimpsest is trying to force it to remember an identity that has been dead for centuries. Elias is telling it to remember what it actually became. Current state wins. The first relay stabilizes. The archive heart taps twice, then twice long, then once. Stable route. Its own language. Good. Elias moves. The second relay is harder. Saint Ver has begun vomiting prisoners into the central sectors. Through surviving hidden fragments, Elias receives the chaos in bursts. A fire-class inmate melts through a barrier. A spatial criminal tears open a short-range fold inside a stairwell. 3 wardens lose a suppression position. 2 rival prisoner groups collide near the North Junction. Walls crack. Floors buckle. Doors cycle constantly. Palimpsest drinks every structural event. Var wanted stress data. Thorn gave her a feast. And the more the prison suffers, the faster the ancient network learns how Saint Ver responds to failure. That clock is now visible. Elias needs all 3 relays before Palimpsest completes the calibration. He reaches the aqueduct junction. Water thunders above him. The ancient pylon underneath is split clean through. No stable center. Bad. The relay requires one. He could spend hours reinforcing it. He has minutes. So our architect uses the technique he first tested on a vault door, and then on one repaired column. Reenact construction. He presses both palms against the fracture. Ancestral state opens. The pylon remembers being whole, not approximately, exactly. Every load channel, every fitted surface, every connection. Elias isolates one critical joint. The same limitation still holds. One joint. But one joint is enough if it is the right one. He recalls the central locking interface. Stone grinds. The broken halves shift toward a configuration they have not occupied in centuries. For 3 seconds, the pylon becomes structurally continuous. Elias jams a focusing rod through the reopened channel. Then a second. The memory releases. The fracture returns. But now the rods bridge the load. Ugly, temporary, absolutely functional. The second relay activates. The archive heart receives another route. Its surface map expands. Civil records, aqueduct, western artery. Now the gatehouse remains. Then Saint Ver screams through the network, not metaphorically. The prison's central structural alarms discharge across every surviving conduit at once. Palimpsest has begun Phase 2. A system impression reaches Elias through the dead city. State memory accumulation threshold nearing completion. Broadcast preparation active. Broadcast. There it is. Var is no longer merely reading Saint Ver, she is preparing to write back. If Palimpsest broadcasts a remembered failure state into the modern capital network before Elias's countersystem exists, thousands of structures could receive false historical configurations. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe doors open. Maybe bridges forget reinforcements. Maybe dungeon seals remember unfinished installation. Nobody sensible gambles a city on that range of possibilities. Elias runs. Above ground, nobody yet understands what is happening. The capital still functions. Markets remain open. Government towers stay lit. Traffic crosses the western bridges. Citizens complain about distant sirens from Saint Ver and continue with their evening. That normality is exactly what makes the situation brutal. A city does not need to know it is standing on a loaded mechanism. The mechanism works regardless. At Saint Ver, Thorn believes he has finally cornered the problem. His squads regain the central ring. Released prisoners are pushed into Elias's presumed escape routes. Suppression cannons cover every visible maintenance passage. The fake resonance Elias planted back in the lower levels still registers intermittently. That is the setup from the beginning. The structural lie, the false recovery readings, the decoy palimpsest signature. Thorn has trusted those systems for hours because they told him exactly what he wanted to hear. Now he commits everything. Seal sublevels, 8 through 12. An engineer hesitates. Sir, that traps our own teams. Do it. And the inmates? Thorn looks at the tactical display. They are already dead if Voss reaches the foundation. So he closes the sectors. Hundreds of tons of emergency barriers drop. Suppression fields spike. Every force Thorn has spent the night concentrating around Elias's fake trail becomes physically isolated from the real routes. That is when the trap finally pays off. Elias feels the shutters engage through his hidden fragments. The exact barriers he made slightly unreliable in Part 2. Barracks doors with altered alignment. Control shutters prepared to jam. Feedback systems trained to report residual vibration instead of deliberate movement. None of those changes mattered alone. Now they matter together. Elias sends one command. Remember the delay. The first shutter closes 2 seconds late. The second closes 7 seconds early. The third reports locked while still 6 inches open. The fourth locks correctly but refuses the reopening command. The fifth redirects load into the sixth. Then the sixth jams halfway. Central control erupts in warnings. Thorn stares at the display. Reset them. No response. Manual override. Nothing. Use palimpsest. Helena Var turns toward him. That gets her attention. No. Thorn wheels around. You wanted Voss contained. I wanted St. Vere stressed. You have it. I did not authorize you to place the entire lower suppression network into a single failure cascade. Thorn points at the screen. You said the prison would obey the custodian protocol. Var studies the errors, then understands. It is. Thorn goes quiet. Var touches the display. One by one, the faulty shutters reveal a pattern. They are not randomly failing. Each remains functional enough to perform one job. Separate teams, redirect movement, block reinforcement, preserve selected corridors. Someone is conducting traffic. Var's face changes. He planted this before he went below. Exactly. The trap has been sitting under their feet since Elias first rewired the maintenance recorder. Thorn did not simply walk into it. He reinforced it. More men, more equipment, more locked sectors, more dependency on centralized commands. Every escalation made the prison easier to partition once Elias chose the moment. Rook sees it from the eastern ring. Her unit is one of the few still mobile because she stopped trusting central routing hours ago. A warden asks her what is happening. Rook looks at the sealed passages. Voss stopped escaping. What? He is arranging us. Better late than never. Meanwhile, Elias reaches the western gatehouse relay. This one is occupied. Meridian office. Etta Sorn and 12 gray uniformed specialists are already waiting beneath the ancient support chamber. Portable memory samplers line the floor. 3 containment pylons surround the old node. A custodian relay device hums at the center. Etta looks up as Elias enters. No surprise. She expected him. Architect Voss. Etta Sorn. That gets a reaction. Small. Enough. You followed us. No. Elias glances around the chamber. The floor did. Etta almost smiles. Then she draws a narrow tool from her belt. Not a weapon in the usual sense. A tuning spike. Ancient markings run along its edge. The archive heart immediately stops. Warning. Foreign structural command instrument detected. Network override capacity high. This will not be easy. Good. Etta plants the spike into the floor. Custodian rhythm spreads outward. Once, twice, pause. 3. The ancient gatehouse support answers. Elias loses contact instantly. The third relay point vanishes from his network. Etta speaks calmly. Custodian 7 predicted you would choose a triad. That sentence is worse than a threat. It means they understand the same architecture. Elias looks at the containment pylons, then at her formation. Did 7 predict where? Etta's eyes narrow. No, there it is. They know the mechanism, not his choices. Difference matters. The first stage belongs to Etta. 12 specialists, 3 pylons, 1 structural command spike. The entire gatehouse node already aligned to custodian language. Elias has 1 archive heart and damaged tools. Etta presses the spike deeper. The buried chamber changes. Floor plates shift. Ancient walls seal the exits. A structural cage closes around him. Appropriate. She raises one hand. Take the heart intact. 4 specialists advance. The archive heart rolls backward. Elias stays where he is. One attacker throws a suppression cable. It wraps Elias's left arm. Another circles right. A third moves for the companion. The heart dodges the first grab, then the second. Its movement is faster now. More deliberate. It taps the floor. Too short. Too long. 1 short. Blocked route. Alternative path. A stone seam opens just enough for the construct to disappear. Etta sees it. Collapse the seams. The custodian spike pulses. Every ancient joint seals. The heart is trapped inside the floor. Stage 2. Pressure. Elias allows them to tighten the cage. 1 specialist locks his other wrist. Another takes the stolen files. Etta steps closer. Where are the other relays? Elias glances at her tuning spike. Stable. 2? 2. And you came here for the third, obviously. Etta studies him. You are remarkably calm for someone who has just failed. Our architect looks at the floor. No. The word lands strangely. Because he is not watching Etta. He is watching the modern reinforcement bolts driven through the ancient foundation. The western gatehouse has been rebuilt repeatedly. Every century adds something. Old stone. Royal masonry. Steel reinforcement. Modern mana braces. 4 architectural generations stacked on 1 dead node. Ancestral state. Layers. That is the key. Etta controls the ancient identity. She assumes that means she controls the structure. But this gatehouse has not been merely ancient for centuries. Elias touches the nearest modern brace with his restrained hand. Memory opens. Installation. Repair. Replacement. Load testing. This brace does not remember custodians. It remembers modern engineers. The next bolt remembers the same. The steel frame remembers current walls. The mana braces remember the living gatehouse above. Edda owns one layer. Elias does not need to contest it. He chooses another. Stage 3 begins. Reenact construction. The technique first appears on a vault, then one repair seam. Now Elias scales the same principle across multiple connected modern joints. Not whole walls, still joints. But dozens of them link through one shared load system. The gatehouse remembers 3 separate reinforcement projects. Elias recalls the moment each one was being fitted. Bolts loosen by fractions. Steel braces shift. Mana channels temporarily return to calibration mode. Nothing collapses. That would be stupid. Instead, every modern reinforcement layer stops transferring force into the ancient node for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds is enough. Edda's custodian spike suddenly controls a foundation that is no longer carrying the current gatehouse load. Her eyes widen. The ancient node becomes structurally isolated. The modern building above remains connected through the recalled reinforcement state. Elias has separated the corpses' identities. The system erupts. Reenact construction advanced. Multi-joint recall achieved. Safe linked joint limit increased. There is the same skill, much larger scale. Exactly when he needs it, the restraints around Elias's wrists are mounted to a modern floor brace. He recalls its installation state too. The anchor bolts loosen. He pulls free. One specialist charges. Elias drives the loosened restraint plate into the man's chest. Another swings a shock rod. Our architect ducks. The archive heart suddenly bursts from a different seam, not the one it entered. Network translation found a route between architectural layers. That is new. The companion slams into Edda's tuning spike. Once. The spike vibrates. Twice. Its command rhythm distorts. Then the heart wraps 3 stone bands around the tool. Not fully evolved. Close. Very close. Edda grabs the spike with both hands. Disconnect it. Too late. The archive heart is not overpowering the custodian instrument. It is reading it. Network translation consumes the command structure. Ancient hierarchy. Node addressing. Priority syntax. Emergency severance. The heart surface fills with new lines. Evolution pressure surges. Sepulture core compatibility increased. Custodian command grammar partially decoded. That is most of its new power, not complete evolution. Enough to terrify the people watching. Edda certainly understands. Pull the spike. Her specialists try. The heart anchors itself harder. Elias reaches the center of the chamber. 3rd relay frame. He has no time to build it properly. So he uses Edda's equipment. 3 containment pylons, already positioned in a triangle. Already synchronized. Already connected to the ancient node. Honestly, sometimes the opposition is very considerate. He rotates the first pylon, reverses its mana polarity. The second gets the same treatment. The third resists. Edda lunges. Elias catches her tuning spike between both hands. The archive heart still wraps it. For 1 second, all 3 connect. Elias. Heart. Custodian instrument. The ancient network explodes through his awareness. Not physically, structurally. He sees palimpsest. St. Vere. Western Gatehouse. The Meridian Office's active roots. Then something farther away, a governing signature, Custodian 7. Watching through another node. The presence notices him too. No face. No voice. Just command pressure. Onsent. Precise. And immediately hostile. A custodian command hits the gatehouse. Sever unauthorized memory user. Edda goes pale. 7. Wait. Too late. The node tries to erase every foreign command pattern simultaneously, including Edda's. So that is how disposable Meridian field teams are. Useful. Elias uses the decoded syntax before it disappears. He does not attack Custodian 7. He sends a simpler instruction, local emergency preservation. The ancient system recognizes the grammar, but the authority signature is wrong. Rejected. The archive heart translates, then inserts Elias's modern structural claim as a current state priority. Ancient grammar. Modern authority. Hybrid command. Accepted for less than 1 second. Enough. The third relay activates. All 3 points connect. Civil records, aqueduct, Western Gatehouse. Triangle complete. The archive heart unfolds fully. Stone bands extend across the chamber. The 3 relay signatures converge through it. The system responds violently. Stable triad relays confirmed. Governing spine memory confirmed. Hostile network contact confirmed. Sepulcher core evolution conditions complete. Evolution pending. Not yet. The heart cannot finish while moving between incompatible networks. But its provisional capacity spikes. Elias uses it immediately. He sends one command across the triad. Listen to the city as it is now, not as palimpsest remembers it, not as the custodians remember it. Now, Every modern structure connected through the Western network contributes current state memory, recent repairs, current loads, existing doors, present foundations, modern bridges, living infrastructure. A massive structural consensus forms. Palimpsest begins its broadcast from St. Vere at exactly the same moment. Ancient remembered state pressure races outward. The two waves meet beneath the capital. For one terrifying instant, the dead city tries to overwrite the living one. Then Elias's triad answers with something palimpsest has been starved of: present memory. Buildings choose their newest coherent identities. A bridge remembers today's reinforcement instead of an ancient collapse. A bunker remembers its sealed door instead of foundation excavation. A government tower remembers completed support columns instead of construction scaffolding. The broadcast fragments. Palimpsest fails to establish citywide state replacement. Across St. Vere, every control screen turns red. Helena Var stares at the readout. Impossible. Mar moves toward her. What happened? Var does not answer immediately. Because she knows. Someone has just used the Western Dead Zone to create a competing governing network, not sabotage. Not escape. Architecture. Her face finally shows something close to fear. He built a second spine. Thorn looks confused. Rook does not. The Marshal lowers her weapon slowly, then looks toward the western side of the capital. Now everyone important understands the same thing. Elias Voss is no longer trapped inside St. Vere. St. Vere is trapped inside a much larger structure Elias is beginning to control. At the gatehouse, Edda stares at the archive heart. Her certainty is gone. The other specialists are frozen. They have spent their careers treating custodian language like absolute structural law. Now they have watched a newly awakened class splice that language into a competing system in real time. Elias removes the tuning spike from the heart. He gives it back to Edda. She looks genuinely confused. Why? Because Seven will want to know exactly what happened. Her expression hardens. You want us to report this? Yes. That is worse than killing them. Elias turns toward the wall. The triad network spreads. Not full control. Not yet. But influence reaches outward across the western quarter. Recognized dead city territory climbs brutally. 12%, 19, 28, 34, then stops. More than enough. He sends one final command through the three relays. Not attack. Open selected routes. Ancient service passages unlock beneath St. Vere's western perimeter. Rook's unit receives a path out. Non-combat staff trapped by Thorn's failed lockdown receive another. Several prisoner sectors gain access to neutral containment corridors instead of the populated central ring. The chaos begins draining away from the places Var needs most. Less stress, less useful calibration. Palimpsest's learning rate collapses. That is the full payoff. The fake systems Elias planted earlier made Thorn concentrate the crisis. The relay network built in secret lets Elias redirect it. And the structural memory law discovered beneath St. Vere gives him a way to stop Palimpsest without destroying the city above it. Every setup finally connects. Thorn watches prisoner flow indicators reverse. No, he slams one hand against the console. Close those routes. Nothing happens. He tries again, no response. Var looks at him. They are no longer part of St. Vere's command hierarchy. Thorn stares. What does that mean? Rook's voice comes through an emergency channel. It means your prison has exits now. Silence. Then she adds, and Voss decides where they go. Thorn's face drains. There, the first true terror. Not because Elias has become stronger in a conventional sense, because the rules Thorn trusted are gone. A perfect prison only works when walls belong to the jailer. These walls no longer do. Elias withdraws from the gatehouse chamber. The archive heart rolls after him, then stops. Its surface pulses. Three bands unfold halfway. Evolution pending. Structural form unstable. Preparation required before final integration. Part 8. Good. No forced transformation now. The companion has done enough. It translated custodian syntax, held the triad, carried the counter-broadcast, and taught the Western Dead Network its first independent command architecture. Elias glances back at Edda. Tell Custodian 7 one thing. She says nothing. He can keep the dead city he remembers. Elias touches the modern gatehouse brace. The living one is occupied. Then he walks away. Behind him, the archive heart taps the floor. Too short, too long. One short. The Western gatehouse answers. Then the aqueduct. Then the civil records pylon. 3 structures, 3 relays. One new language spreading outward. And beneath St. Vere, Palimpsest receives the first command in centuries that it cannot overwrite. The safest room Elias can find before the final clash is not inside St. Vere. It is underneath an abandoned bakery. Specifically, beneath the flour storage cellar of a shop that burned down 19 years ago and was rebuilt 3 times without anyone realizing an ancient service chamber still exists below the foundation. The place smells faintly of old stone, damp earth, and cinnamon. Apparently, structural necromancy has standards now. The archive heart rests on a work table made from 2 broken support slabs. For the first time since his imprisonment, it is completely still. No rolling, no tapping, no wandering towards suspicious walls. Elias studies it carefully. 3 stone bands remain partially unfolded from its body. They no longer retract fully. Thin lines across its surface show the Western network in miniature. Civil records, aqueduct, gatehouse, several minor routes. A few disconnected fragments near St. Vere. The companion has become too structurally complex to keep pretending it is just a movable relay. Sepulchre core is coming. The question is whether the evolution finishes under controlled conditions or during the worst possible moment. Elias prefers controlled conditions. Naturally, the system seems determined to make that difficult. He removes every component gathered so far and lays them across the table. 2 focusing rods from the ruined siege anchor, 1 intact custodian tuning spike, 3 damaged access seals, a short piece of palimpsest conduit, several raised fragments, 1 section of modern reinforcement steel, and the ancient slate from the lower archive. No mystical treasure, no legendary weapon descending from the heavens. Just stolen hardware, dead masonry, and a deeply unreasonable amount of engineering. Perfect. A soft scraping noise comes from the stairwell. Marshal Sabine Rook enters carrying a metal food container in one hand and a directorate medical kit in the other. She has changed out of her formal armor. Her injured shoulder is wrapped tightly. The black blade remains at her hip. Elias looks at the food. Rook sets it down. Before asking, "No, this is not poisoned. I was going to ask whether that is soup." It was soup. She opens the container. Inside is something thick, brown, and aggressively practical. Chunks of potato, carrot, shredded beef, several pieces of bread already soaked through. Steam carries the smell of pepper and roasted onion into the chamber. Elias looks at it, then at her. Rook shrugs with one shoulder. St. Vere's emergency kitchen is not famous. He takes the spoon. That is as close as either of them gets to gratitude. Rook sits on an overturned crate. For several minutes, they do not discuss conspiracies, ancient cities, hidden classes, or the possibility that every major building in the capital is sitting on top of dead infrastructure. Elias eats. Rook replaces the bandage on her shoulder. The archive heart slowly rotates toward the food container. Elias notices. No. It stops. Rook watches the little structure. Does it understand you? Sometimes. That sounds reassuring. It should not. The heart taps the table. Too short. Too long. 1 short. Rook looks at Elias. What does that mean? Blocked route. Alternative path. She stares at the companion, then at the empty food container. The heart taps again. Rook actually laughs once, very quietly. Apparently it disagrees with the menu. Elias takes the last piece of bread before the construct can become more opinionated. Tiny moment, nothing dramatic, still useful. Because for the first time, Rook is seeing the archive heart as more than an anomaly. And Elias is seeing that the thing is no longer merely repeating mechanical behavior. It is making context. That matters. Rook pulls a folded sheet from inside her coat. Central control status. Elias reads it while eating. Thorn has consolidated loyal wardens inside St. Vere's upper command levels. Mar has ordered all surviving directorate personnel to surrender control to a newly declared emergency infrastructure authority. Helena Var has moved palimpsest into final synchronization. Worse, 3 Meridian office teams have entered separate buried nodes across the capital, not random nodes, north, east, southeast. Combined with St. Vere, they form another triad. Elias spreads the city map. There it is. Var learned from him. Quickly, her 3 external nodes create supporting relays around palimpsest's governing spine, a mirror of his Western counter-network, except hers is larger, older, better supplied. Rook watches his face. Bad? Efficient. That bad, then. Elias points to the 3 sites. She is stabilizing broadcast authority. For what? He taps the map. For another attempt. Rook goes silent. She has already seen what partial failure looks like inside St. Vere. The idea of that reaching the capital does not need explanation. Elias finishes eating, then moves the food container aside. Time to work. He places the custodian spike beside the palimpsest conduit. The final skill he needs already exists in pieces. Reenact construction lets him recall previous structural states. Ancestral state lets him identify deeper functional identities. The triad network lets him broadcast present state consensus. Part 7 proved all 3 can interact, but the method is too slow, too local. If VAR broadcasts a citywide failure state, Elias cannot individually recall every affected joint. He needs a single command that tells structures what state to choose. Not merely remember, select. That is the missing mechanism. He places the ancient slate under the archive heart. The companion immediately spreads its stone bands. One touches the custodian spike. One touches the conduit. One touches the modern reinforcement steel. 3 eras. Ancient command. Palimpsest interface. Modern structure. Elias places both palms on the table. Memory opens. The steel remembers installation. The conduit remembers calibration. The spike remembers custodian syntax. The slate remembers the dead city. Too much information arrives at once. The archive heart begins translating. Elias isolates one problem. A wall has many past states. Built, damaged, repaired, reinforced, modified. If palimpsest can force the wall to remember one failure state, then Elias needs a rule for choosing a different one. The newest state is not always safest. A recent repair may be temporary. The oldest state is not always strongest. Original construction may be weaker than modern reinforcement, so time alone cannot choose. Function. That is the answer. A structure should recall the most recent state in which it successfully fulfilled its current purpose. The bridge remembers carrying present loads safely. The prison door remembers being securely closed. The dungeon seal remembers containing the gate. The aqueduct remembers holding pressure. Current function becomes the filter. Elias changes the command model. Ancestral state identifies all valid identities. Memory excavation provides recorded structural states. Reenact construction supplies recall. The network compares those states against present function, then selects the last stable match. A system readout quietly appears. Composite technique recognized. Incomplete. Provisional designation. Functional recall. Elias continues. He tests it on a cracked support brace in the chamber. The brace has 4 remembered states. Original installation. First repair. Second repair. Current damage state. Its current purpose is simple. Carry roof load. Functional recall identifies the second repair as the last state where that purpose was fulfilled with the highest stability margin. Elias activates the technique. The brace shifts, not backward through time. Not magically rebuilt. Its joints, stress distribution, and material alignment temporarily reenact that stable configuration. The crack closes enough to transfer load. The ceiling stops creaking. Rook looks up. Permanent? No. How long? 7 seconds. She looks unimpressed. Elias agrees. 7 seconds will not save a city. He changes one variable. Instead of holding the recalled state through his own authority, he stores the selection inside the archive heart. Then the heart distributes it to the relay. The same brace responds again. 10 seconds. Then 12. Better. He changes another variable. Modern reinforcement steel becomes an anchor for the recalled state. The brace now has a physical reference. 19 seconds. Good. Now scale. He connects 3 nearby joints. Same current function. Same load system. Functional recall spreads across them. The repaired segment stabilizes as one unit. 31 seconds. There it is. The technique first used on one vault joint has become a networked structural correction system. Exactly what he needs for palimpsest. But there is a problem. Rook notices before he says anything. The heart is cracking. Elias looks down. Thin fractures spread across its outer shell. Not evolution cracks. Overload. Distributed memory is storing too many competing states. If he pushes city-scale functional recall through the current form, the companion will shatter. That will not do. Elias removes the ancient slate. The heart's vibration settles. He studies the 3 partially unfolded bands. Sepulchre core needs a stable triad. It has one. It needs hostile contact. Done. It needs governing spine memory. Done. Evolution conditions are complete. Yet it still refuses to finish. Why? Because something is missing structurally, not energetically. A core cannot govern while remaining portable. That is the contradiction. Archive heart survives by moving. Sepulchre core requires anchoring. Elias looks at the miniature network engraved across its shell. The solution becomes obvious. The companion should not evolve by becoming permanently fixed. It should divide its functions. Mobile archive. Stationary core. Same entity. 2 structural states. Rook watches him dismantle the relay frame. What are you doing? Giving it somewhere to leave half of itself. He uses the 3 access seals as anchor points. The focusing rods become transmission arms. The modern reinforcement steel becomes the physical spine. Then he slots the palimpsest conduit into the center. The design resembles the reversed 3-arch symbol he sketched earlier. 3 relays, 1 governing spine. Except this time the archive heart does not sit inside the spine. It connects to it. The distinction matters. Elias places the heart against the frame. Its stone bands extend automatically. 1, 2, 3. Lock. The system responds. Sepulchre core evolution architecture validated. Final evolution requires live network ignition. Good. That will happen in part 9, not before. The heart releases from the frame. Portable again. Behind it remains a dormant core structure. Empty. Waiting. Preparation complete. Exactly as planned. Rook steps closer. You built a body for it, a station. It looks like a body. It is not. The archive heart taps the table, once, then turns toward Elias. Rook raises an eyebrow. Elias ignores both of them. Bonding complete. Apparently, he packs the dormant sepulchre frame into modular sections. No dramatic goodbye, no sentimental speech, just careful work. He wraps each focusing rod, checks each joint twice, replaces one damaged seal. The heart stays beside his hand throughout the process. Every time Elias moves a component, the construct shifts another into reach. No command required. Quiet coordination, much more valuable than conversation. Then the Western network pulses. Someone has entered the civil records relay. Elias freezes. Not Thorn, not Rook's people. Meridian office. He routes perception through the triad. Edda Sorn, alone. She touches the relay. No attack, no custodian override. Instead, she inserts a small metal strip into a seam, then leaves. Elias sends a fragment to retrieve it. Minutes later, the strip reaches the chamber. One side carries Meridian office geometry, the other contains a stamped route code. Rook reads it. What is this? An address. To where? Elias compares it to the Dead City map, then stops. The route points to a buried node beneath the Ministry of Treasury, not one of VAR's 3. A fourth site. Custodian 7. Maybe, or someone close enough to matter. Edda just gave him a door. Why? Unknown. Useful anyway. Elias stores the strip. Not tonight. The immediate threat remains palimpsest. Then the enemy makes the final move. At St. Ver, Helena VAR stands inside the ancient gate chamber. 3 Meridian relay signatures stabilize across the city. Mar watches from the control platform. Thorn arrives wearing full containment armor. His face is pale with exhaustion and fury. You told me Voss would lose access once palimpsest reached full authority. VAR does not look at him. He should have. Should? He adapted. Thorn's jaw tightens. Mar cuts in. Then stop adapting to him. VAR finally turns. You still think he is the anomaly. She points at the structural map. He is the response. Neither man understands. That may be intentional. VAR places both hands against the ancient control surface. Palimpsest opens another layer. A second map appears. Not St. Ver, the entire capital. Thousands of structural points. Mar's expression changes. You said city integration required another month. It did. Then why is it ready? VAR looks toward the Western Triad. Because Voss completed the missing calibration. There it is. His counter-broadcast gave palimpsest exactly the modern state comparison data it lacked. Part 7 stopped the first attack. It also taught the enemy something. That is the price of using a system against its creator. Or perhaps the price of assuming anyone here is the creator. VAR enters the final custodian sequence. Once. Twice. Pause. 3. The 3 external Meridian relays answer. North. East. Southeast. Palimpsest city network stabilizes. Mar smiles. Thorn exhales. VAR does neither. She knows what comes next. Broadcast window opens at dawn. Less than 1 hour. Back beneath the bakery, Elias receives the pressure change through the Western Dead network. No need for clocks. The city itself tells him. Everything connected to palimpsest just tightened. The final position is set. Elias stands. He closes the medical kit Rook left open. Then he tosses it to her. Shoulder. She catches it. Now, you will need both arms. That is apparently enough explanation. Rook tightens the support brace around her injury. Elias lifts the modular sepulchre frame. The archive heart rolls toward the exit. Stops, turns, waits for him. He takes the custodian tuning spike in one hand, the palimpsest conduit fragment in the other. Then he opens the hidden cellar door. Above them, early delivery carts are already moving through the streets. People are waking, bakeries are lighting ovens. Bridge crews are changing shifts. Dungeon barriers are beginning morning diagnostics. Nobody knows that the foundations under all of it are about to receive a command from a dead city. Elias steps into the stairwell. The archive heart goes first. Rook follows. Behind them, the temporary work table remains covered in one final chalk diagram. 3 relay points, 1 governing spine, a circle around St. Ver, and beneath it, 1 completed phrase, functional recall. The mechanism is ready. The companion is ready. The city is not. Elias closes the cellar door and starts walking toward St. Ver. Dawn reaches the capital exactly when palimpsest begins trying to kill it. Not with fire, not with monsters. Not with an army, with memory. Across the city, thousands of foundations pulse at once. The first wave is almost invisible. A bridge over the Eastern Canal shudders. A government archive door unlocks itself. 3 dungeon barriers briefly lose synchronization. The Royal Transit Tunnel drops pressure. Then every building connected to the ancient network receives the same impossible instruction. Remember when you were weaker. That is Palimpsest's attack. Saint Vere stands at the center of it. Helena Var places both hands against the ancient control slab, while the 3 meridian relays hold the broadcast stable. North, east, southeast. 3 arches, 1 spine. The original architecture. The dead city's command language floods upward. Once, twice, pause, 3. Every buried route answers. Then structures begin changing. A western watchtower loses 1 layer of reinforcement. A prison gate recalls the configuration it held before its 3rd locking mechanism was installed. A dungeon seal beneath Market District, 7 forgets 12 years of maintenance. Warning bells erupt across the capital. People stop in the streets. Mana technicians sprint toward control panels. Nobody understands why buildings are suddenly behaving like older versions of themselves. Elias does. He is already walking into St. Vere, not sneaking, not hiding. Walking straight through the western perimeter entrance with Marshal Rook beside him and the archive heart rolling ahead. The outer checkpoint is abandoned. The next is not. 20 wardens hold the corridor. Thorn's men, full containment armor, suppression rifles. 2 portable nullifiers. Their captain sees Elias. His face changes. There, weapons rise. Elias keeps walking. Rook draws her black blade. The archive heart taps the floor. Too short, too long. 1 short. Alternative route. Elias looks at the walls. No. The heart stops. This time there is no alternative route. They are going through. The first suppression volley hits. Blue-white fields burst across the corridor. Elias's connection to St. Vere vanishes. Stage 1. The opposition has every conventional advantage. Again. Thorn learned from the earlier fights. The nullifiers are not aimed at Elias. They are aimed at the walls. Smart. If structural necromancy depends on connected matter, isolate the matter. The captain advances. Director Mar authorizes lethal force. Rook glances sideways. Mar still thinks he is in charge? Elias looks toward the ceiling. No. A violent tremor passes beneath them. Palimpsest broadcasts again. One of St. Vere's old emergency barriers recalls a pre-reinforcement configuration. The gate buckles inward. 3 wardens turn. That is enough. Rook moves first. Her blade cuts through the nearest suppression cable. Elias ducks under a rifle stock. He drives 1 elbow into an armor seam, then another. A nullifier operator backs away. Our architect grabs the device's support arm, not the operator. The equipment. He twists it toward the wall. The field shifts 6 feet. Connection returns. Elias touches stone. Memory floods in. The corridor has been rebuilt twice. First construction. First reinforcement. Second reinforcement. Functional recall identifies the latest stable state serving its current purpose. Contain passage. Support upper load. Maintain security. Elias sends the command. The corridor remembers itself correctly. The buckled emergency barrier straightens, not permanently. Long enough. It slams shut behind half the wardens. Formation divided. Rook looks at him. Useful. Temporary. Still useful. The archive heart shoots beneath the raised barrier. Elias follows. Stage 2 begins before the first fight even finishes. Palimpsest increases broadcast strength. Across the capital, structural failures multiply. Not catastrophic yet, but accelerating. A hospital stairwell loses a support brace. An aqueduct remembers a cracked lining. A dungeon access gate opens 6 inches. A residential tower leans by less than 1 degree. Tiny failures, thousands of them. The city starts screaming through Elias's network. His western triad catches the pressure. Civil records relay holds. Aqueduct relay holds. Gatehouse relay struggling. Elias feels Meridian office pushing custodian authority directly against it. Custodian 7 is moving. Finally, at the western gatehouse, gray uniformed teams surround the ancient node. Edda Sorn stands among them. She still carries the tuning spike Elias returned. A voice speaks through the Meridian relay. Not physically. Command pressure translated into sound by their equipment. Sever the western triad. Edda looks at the display. That destabilizes current state correction. Sever it. Parts of the city will fail. A pause. Then the answer. Acceptable. There. Even Edda freezes. Custodian 7 does not care about protecting the capital, only controlling Palimpsest. The hidden layer shows its real priority at last. She looks at the tuning spike in her hand, then toward Elias's relay. Her decision is small, almost invisible. She turns the spike one notch in the wrong direction. The Meridian override loses efficiency. Not enough to openly betray 7. Enough to buy time. Elias feels the western gatehouse stabilize. He files that away. Then St. Vare's central ring opens ahead. The prison is unrecognizable. Released inmates have been pushed into multiple sectors. Suppression doors hang crooked. Emergency barriers cycle incorrectly. Smoke fills upper walkways. Wardens fight prisoners. Prisoners fight each other. And through all of it, palimpsest keeps recording. Every damaged state. Every failure. Every forced opening. Helena Var is feeding the prison's collapse directly into the city. That has to stop. The archive heart reaches the inner junction, then freezes. Its engraved surface ignites with dozens of structural lines. Evolution pressure spikes. Live network ignition detected. Sepulchre core completion available. Not yet. Elias grabs it. Keeps moving. The evolution has to happen at the right location. The dead center. Palimpsest governing spine. Anything less wastes the entire design. Thorn appears on the upper bridge. Full containment armor, heavy rifle, 2 suppression squads behind him. He looks exhausted, furious, terrified, and now completely committed. Voss! Elias stops below. Thorn points the rifle down. You built this place to contain monsters. Elias looks around at the collapsing prison. You released them because of you. No. The answer is cold. Because you needed the prison to fail where you could blame me for it. That lands. Thorn's finger tightens. Elias continues. You changed my third anchor. A tiny pause. You hid palimpsest beneath my foundation. Another. You used my execution to trigger a structural condition you did not understand. Thorn's face hardens. Your rank existed because we gave it to you. There it is. The line. The same arrogance from the elevator. The same assumption beneath everything. Elias looks up at him. And you thought burning the paper burned the knowledge. Thorn fires. Rook shoves Elias sideways. The round hits stone. The bridge squads open fire. Stage 2 becomes brutal. Suppression rounds chew through walls. Prisoners scatter. One released combat awakener charges the wardens. A shockwave cracks the central floor. Palimpsest captures every fracture instantly. Elias cannot fight Thorn conventionally, not while Var is turning every damaged structure into ammunition against the city. So he stops trying. He touches the fractured floor. Ancestral state activates. St. Vare appears in layers. Original foundation. Modern prison. Ancient transit spine beneath. Palimpsest conduits inside both. Different identities overlapping. Thorn controls the prison. Var controls palimpsest. Custodian 7 controls ancient hierarchy. Elias chooses current function. Contain danger. Protect the city. Preserve structural integrity. Functional recall spreads. 1 crack closes. Then 5. Then 12. Every repaired joint he touched earlier becomes a reference. The technique scales through linked structural memory. Palimpsest pushes back. Failure states arrive faster. A wall remembers unfinished construction. Elias forces it to select the last stable containment state. A gate remembers being open. He recalls the latest secure closure. A support column remembers being cut for illegal conduit installation. He chooses the state immediately before Mars workers altered it. The black conduit inside becomes exposed. There it is. Part 5 pays off. Ancestral truth. Modern corruption. Same wall. Elias sends the recall across every illegal modification he can reach. 1 column opens. Then another. Then 12. St. Vare begins revealing palimpsest's hidden conduits from inside its own bones. Wardens stare. Rook looks upward. Black channels appear through walls all across the central ring. Evidence. Physical. Impossible to erase with paperwork. Mar sees the exposure from control. His face drains. Stop him. Var does not move. That is not the problem. Mar grabs her shoulder. He is exposing the installation. The broadcast is destabilizing. Then increase output. Var finally looks at him. If I increase output, palimpsest may overwrite St. Vare completely. Mar's voice drops. Do it. There. His final choice. Not protect the capital, not save the prison. Protect the project. Var studies him for 1 second, then removes his hand from her shoulder. No. Mar draws a pistol. Rook is not there to see it. Elias is. Through the wall. Contact memory. Pressure. Mar's hand around metal. Finger moving. The control room wall remembers. Elias sends 1 command through the exposed conduits. Remember installation. The floor beneath Mar recalls the moment before its final surface plate was fixed. 1 joint releases. Mar's footing vanishes. The shot goes wide. Var steps away. Then palimpsest fires its full broadcast anyway. Custodian 7 does it remotely. The entire ancient network detonates with command pressure. Every buried node answers. 3 arches. 1 spine. The capital lurches, bridges groan. Doors unlock, dungeon barriers flicker. St. Vair's central ring begins reverting toward earlier structural states all at once. Elias feels the Western Triad buckle. Civil records relay fractures. Aqueduct relay drops to half output. Gatehouse nearly disappears. The archive heart convulses in his hand. Live network ignition critical. Evolution mandatory. Now, Elias reaches the central foundation shaft. The same giant ancient gate rises below, 3 intersecting arches, 1 vertical line, palimpsest. He drops the modular sepulchre frame onto the stone, 1 focusing rod. Second, reinforcement spine, palimpsest conduit. 3 anchor seals, the same mechanism built under the bakery. Every piece locks into place. The archive heart rolls into the center. Its 3 bands unfold, 1 to St. Vair, 1 to the Western Triad, 1 to palimpsest itself. Impossible geometry. Exactly what it was prepared for. The system speaks. Stable triad recognized. Governing spine memory recognized. Hostile network contact recognized. Live ignition confirmed. Evolution complete. The archive heart breaks apart. Rook stops beside Elias. For 1 second, it looks destroyed. Then every fragment rises, not into a creature, into architecture. Stone bands extend across the floor. Metal veins lock into the sepulchre frame. The ancient slate sinks into the center. The miniature map on the heart's shell expands outward, engraving itself across a circular platform 10 feet wide, 1 core, 3 relays, hundreds of connected dead structures. The final form settles. Sepulchre core, not alive like an animal, not stationary like a machine. Something in between, a governing undead structure. Its first action is not a command. It asks, through vibration, 3 short, 1 long, 2 short, Elias's language. His first rhythm, not the custodian knock, not palimpsests. His, that is the bond. Elias places both hands on the core. Listen, the sepulchre core activates. Everything arrives at once. St. Vair, Western Triad, ancient city, modern capital. Thousands of buildings, millions of remembered touches, repairs, cracks, doors, foundations, bridges, dungeon seals. Every structure contains countless past states. Palimpsest selects weakness. Elias selects function. Stage 3 ends. Stage 4 begins. No more holding back. Functional recall expands citywide. The technique that once recalled 1 vault joint now passes through the sepulchre core into every connected structure. Not blindly. The core translates, compares, filters. Current purpose, latest stable state, highest functional integrity. Choose. A bridge that remembers damage also remembers repair. Functional recall selects repair. A prison gate that remembers installation also remembers secure operation. Select secure operation. A dungeon seal that remembers maintenance gaps also remembers full containment. Select containment. A tower foundation remembers every reinforcement added over decades. Select the strongest state compatible with the building standing above it now. The city answers, 1 district at a time. Then dozens. Failures stop propagating. Walls stabilize. Dungeon barriers lock. Aqueduct pressure returns. The Eastern Canal Bridge straightens. Palimpsest broadcasts harder. The sepulchre core answers harder. Ancient command versus modern function. Custodian hierarchy versus structural consensus. And Elias finally understands the flaw Helena Var missed. Palimpsest assumes older memory has authority because the ancient city once governed the network. But memory is not ownership. Memory is evidence. A structure becomes what people continue using it to be. Centuries of repairs outweigh 1 buried command if the system is allowed to compare function instead of age. The dead city cannot simply overwrite the living one anymore. The living city has too much history of its own. Palimpsest's broadcast fractures. Helena Var stares at the control surface. Every red failure point turns gold. Then stable. Mar screams, "Override him! I cannot! You built this!" Var looks at him. No. She watches Elias's counter-network appear. He understands it. That is worse. Custodian 7 enters directly. Command pressure slams through palimpsest. The giant ancient gate begins opening. 1 inch. 2. Stone older than the kingdom grinds apart. Whatever lies beyond starts feeding raw governing authority into the network. The sepulchre core cracks. Rook looks at Elias. Can it hold? No. Simple answer. Then he changes the plan. Functional recall cannot beat an unlimited ancient spine forever, so he stops trying to overpower it. He uses the skill differently, the same way he did with the vault, the same way he did with the eastern column, the same way he did with the gatehouse reinforcement, reenact construction. He searches palimpsest's own memory. Not for when it was strongest, for when it was incomplete. The giant gate remembers installation. Ancient workers, no, not workers. Structural pressure shaping it into place. One state before activation. One state before the governing spine connected. There. Elias isolates the critical junction, the one connection tying palimpsest's command authority into the dead city's network. One joint. The oldest version of the same technique. Everything returns to one joint. He smiles. Barely. Of course. The world's biggest prison still depends on a connection. He sends the target into the sepulchre core. The core translates modern functional recall into ancient structural syntax. Palimpsest understands the request. Too late. Reenact construction activates at maximum scale. Not the whole city, not the whole gate, one governing joint. But every connected relay supports the recall. The central spine remembers the moment before activation. For 1 second, palimpsest ceases to be a governing system. It becomes an unfinished structure. Custodian 7's authority disappears. The broadcast dies. The entire capital goes silent. Then St. Vere answers Elias. Every wall, every floor, every door. Not because he dominates them, because the competing command vanished and his functional network remains. Thorn sees the lights change. Suppression systems turn away from prisoner sectors. Emergency shutters open safe routes. His private command bridge seals itself. He pounds the control. No. The same doors he used to trap others close around him. Rook reaches the bridge seconds later. Thorn raises his rifle. Elias speaks through the wall relay. Your third anchor was misaligned. Thorn freezes. The same warning from the beginning. Elias continues. You ignored the engineer. The floor beneath the command bridge remembers the overload Thorn forced onto it, not collapse. Just failure of his private exit route. The bridge retracts from the walls. Isolation. Rook steps forward. Thorn looks from her to the sealed doors. All his authority, all his men, all his emergency protocols, gone. He finally understands the architecture of his own defeat, not revenge, a containment decision. Rook takes his weapon. Mar tries to flee central control. The exposed palimpsest conduits prevent that. Every corridor he used for secret access now sits visible on St. Vere's structural map. His hidden routes become the easiest routes to trace. Wardens find him within minutes. Minister Kest survives. Barely. He stands in central control, staring at files spilling from Mar's opened archives and the exposed conduit reports appearing across every system screen. The conspiracy can no longer be contained inside one institution. Too many witnesses, too much physical evidence. Helena Var does not run. She remains beside palimpsest. Elias reaches her after the final broadcast collapses. The ancient gate is sealed again, not destroyed. Important distinction. The sepulchre core cannot permanently erase that network. Not yet. Var looks at Elias. Then at the core, you finished it faster than Vale predicted. Elias stops. There. Another thread. Not for now. Var removes her hands from the control surface. Custodian 7 will not accept this. Neither did Thorn. 7 is not Thorn. I noticed. She almost smiles. Then her expression becomes tired. You think this ends with the prison? No. Good answer. Because it does not. A final custodian command reaches palimpsest from somewhere beyond St. Vere. Not an attack. Withdrawal. North relay disappears, then east, then southeast. Meridian office is severing its connections before Elias can trace them. The hidden layer is retreating, not defeated. Forced back. Edisorn watches her team disconnect the western interface. Nobody receives an order to kill her for the earlier delay. Yet. She removes the tuning spike, then pockets it. A problem for later. At St. Vere, the sepulchre core begins collapsing back toward portable form. Not fully. That is impossible now. Its governing station remains anchored beneath the prison, but a smaller structure separates from the center. A compact stone heart. New lines cover it. Cleaner. More complex. The companion now exists in two linked states. Stationary sepulchre core. Mobile archive heart. Exactly as Elias designed. Evolution complete. No miracle. Engineering. The mobile heart rolls toward him. Stops against his boot. Then taps. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Elias crouches. Places one hand on it. For several seconds, he says nothing. This is the first structure that answered him when he had nothing. 1 mortar fragment, 7% integrity, then dust, then a node, then a relay, then an archive heart. Now half of an entire city-scale command system. His expression remains controlled, but his hand stays on the stone slightly longer than necessary. That is enough, Rook notices. She wisely says nothing. The system sends one final update. Necromancer of Structures class authority expanded. Recognize structural domain. St. Vere and Western Dead City Network. Functional recall stabilized. Sepulchre core established. Palimpsest governing authority interrupted. Citywide collapse prevented. Elias stands. Above them, dawn finally reaches the streets properly. The capital remains standing. Bridges hold. Dungeon seals remain closed. Hospitals keep their stairwells. Thousands of people will never know how close every piece of architecture around them came to remembering the wrong version of itself. St. Vere is damaged, exposed, politically radioactive. Still standing too, Var looks toward the sealed ancient gate, then at Elias. What will you do with it? He studies palimpsest, the machine that used his prison as a calibration model, the system buried under his life's work, the structure someone hoped to control by destroying his name. Elias reaches toward the central slab, then stops. He does not claim palimpsest. Not yet. Too many unknowns. Custodian 7. Meridian Office. Vale, the dead city. The fourth node beneath the treasury. One battle does not make those disappear. Instead, Elias disconnects St. Vere's illegal conduits from the governing gate, one by one. Physical separation. No dramatic explosion. No grand destruction. He makes sure palimpsest cannot broadcast through the prison again without rebuilding the entire interface. Only then does he turn away. Rook falls into step beside him. The mobile archive heart rolls between them. Behind, the sepulchre core keeps one slow pulse running through St. Vere. 3 short, 1 long. 2 short, the prison answers. Not as property. Not as a weapon. As a structure finally remembering who actually understands it. And the man, the government sealed inside the world's perfect cage, walks toward the surface while every locked door opens before he reaches it. By noon, St. Vere is no longer officially classified as a prison. That decision takes the government 11 minutes. Actually, admitting why takes much longer. The emergency declaration calls it a compromised strategic structure pending independent reconstruction review, which is bureaucratic language for everyone, suddenly realizing the world's most secure containment facility has spent 6 years sitting on top of an illegal city-scale control system. The capital remains standing. That is the important part. Bridges hold. Dungeon barriers stabilize. Water continues moving through the aqueduct network. The western districts wake from emergency lockdown with cracked walls, confused engineers, and absolutely no understanding of how close several hundred buildings came to remembering obsolete structural states at the same time. St. Vere itself looks worse. Entire corridors are misaligned. Emergency shutters remain jammed. Black palimpsest conduits sit exposed inside opened columns. 3 prison levels have been evacuated completely, and in the central foundation chamber, the sepulchre core continues pulsing through the stone. 3 short, 1 long. 2 short, the prison answers every time. Elias stands beside the original master console. Not chained, not escorted, not asking permission. Marshal Rook places a stack of emergency reports beside him. 43 injured. Dead? 6. Elias looks at her. Rook understands the question. 2 wardens during the internal firefight. 3 prisoners during Thorne's release order. 1 maintenance technician when palimpsest destabilized the eastern access stair. Elias's expression does not move much. Still, his hand stops over the reports. Those deaths belong on the final ledger, not as dramatic motivation. As structural cost, every reckless decision leaves physical evidence somewhere. Sometimes the evidence is stone. Sometimes it is people. Rook continues. All civilian infrastructure failures in the capital are contained. Temporary recalls? Most already released naturally. Dungeon. Seals? Stable. The Eastern Canal Bridge? Engineers say it should be closed for 2 days. Elias nods. Close it for 4. Rook looks at him. They will complain. They can complain from a bridge that remains standing. Fair enough. The mobile archive heart rolls onto the console. Its surface is different after evolution. Cleaner. Denser. The miniature map engraved across it no longer shows only St. Vere. A thin western network now stretches beyond the prison. 3 relay points remain clearly marked. Civil records. Aqueduct. Gatehouse. The rest stays dim, dormant. Waiting. The heart taps the console twice. Rook looks down. Does that mean something? Elias touches the surface. A route appears. Sublevel 12. Dorian Vale. Right. 1 loose end at a time. Before that, the people who turned St. Vere into a weapon need their own outcomes. Commander Garrick Thorne is still inside the command bridge where Elias isolated him. Nobody has opened it yet. Not because they cannot, because Rook asked Elias not to. Good judgment. The bridge was designed as a command sanctuary. Separate air, separate emergency provisions, separate security. Thorne used that exact isolation to remain safe while ordering others into lethal containment zones. So Elias leaves him inside it until every released prisoner is secured and every wounded warden is evacuated. 7 hours. No torture. No threats. Just waiting behind the same kind of barrier he trusted more than people. When the door finally opens, Thorne looks smaller. Still armored, still furious. But the authority is gone. Rook waits outside with 12 wardens. None wear his crimson command insignia anymore. Thorn steps forward. Voss. Elias looks at the sealed bridge behind him, then at the commander. You told me I should have stayed in the cell. Thorn's mouth tightens. Elias gestures toward the bridge. You had the safer one. That is all. No speech, no execution. Rook removes Thorn's command, seal herself. The directorate arrests him for unauthorized prisoner release, attempted extrajudicial execution, assault on a marshal, falsification of containment records, and conspiracy involving illegal infrastructure modification. Appropriate. His punishment comes through the system he abused, not Elias's hands. Director Selwyn Marr gets something different. He tries to erase palimpsest documentation before investigators arrive. Almost impressive. He reaches an administrative vault, uses a private override, burns 3 data crystals, then discovers that Elias already exposed the physical conduits across St. Vere. Hard to delete a conspiracy when several hundred yards of black metal are sticking out of walls. Worse, the structure remembers. The archive doors remember Marr's visits, the lower foundation remembers his hand, the hidden vault remembers which files he opened. Even his secret access corridor remembers 6 years of footsteps. Marr built his protection around the assumption that paperwork controls truth. Now architecture testifies against him. Rook places him in a standard holding chamber, not St. Vere's deepest cell. That would be theatrical. Just a plain reinforced room with a desk fixed to the floor. Marr sees Elias through the doorway. His expression twists. You think this makes you untouchable? Elias looks at the wall. No. The answer annoys him more. Marr steps closer. You have no idea what the Meridian office is. Correct. You have no idea who 7 is. Correct. You have no idea how many structures they control. Elias finally looks at him. Also correct. Marr waits for fear. Nothing arrives. Our architect closes the door. The lock engages. Marr's problem is simple. He mistakes unknown scale for guaranteed defeat. Elias treats unknown scale as a measurement problem. Minister Odrin Kest receives no prison cell. Not immediately. His signature sits on the arrest order. His office authorized Elias's rank revocation. But the recovered records show something more complicated. Kest knew palimpsest existed. He did not know its actual citywide function. He approved Elias's detention, believing Marr's claim that the architect had compromised national containment infrastructure. Still guilty. Just differently. The Crown Security Council suspends him pending investigation. Rook asks whether Elias is satisfied. He does not answer that question. Satisfaction is irrelevant. Evidence separates responsibilities better than anger does. Helena Var is the hardest one. She remains inside the palimpsest chamber voluntarily. No restraints, no attempt to escape. 3 independent investigators surround the central platform, while engineers disconnect the last modern conduits. Elias enters alone. Var is studying the sealed ancient gate. You disconnected St. Vere cleanly. Mostly. Mostly? Eastern Conduit 12 fused into original stone. She nods. That one always did run hot. Interesting phrasing. Elias stops beside her. You expected my class. Var does not deny it. You want the short answer? No. That almost earns a smile. She reaches into her coat. Rook's people tense outside the chamber. Var slowly removes one brass key. Old. Mechanical. A number stamped across the shaft. 703. She places it on the control slab. Vale's first theory was that severing an architect from a sufficiently integrated structure could create a dead domain awakening. Elias says nothing. We tested the principle. On whom? Var's expression becomes flat. Not successfully. There it is. Not a confession large enough to explain everything. Enough to establish guilt. You used St. Vere. We used your ownership severance. You arranged it. Marr accelerated it. Thorn executed it. And you allowed it. Yes. Elias looks at her. No rage. No sudden violence. Just one cold fact settling into place. His awakening was not completely accidental. Var may not have known the exact class. She knew enough to gamble with his life. That changes her position. Elias picks up the brass key. You stay out of palimpsest. Var looks at him. By whose authority? He places the archive heart on the ancient control slab. The chamber responds instantly. Not to Var. To him. The sealed gate vibrates. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Elias looks back at her. Structural. That actually shuts her up. Var is placed under technical detention rather than ordinary imprisonment. No access to St. Vere. No access to palimpsest. No communication with Meridian-linked infrastructure teams. Her research remains under independent custody. She is not forgiven. She is not executed. She becomes what she feared becoming most. Cut off from the system she spent years studying. The hidden layer survives beyond her. That is important. Nobody pretends otherwise. By evening, Elias reaches sublevel 12. Professor Dorian Vale is still exactly where he left him. 7 steps. Turn. 7 steps back. The supposedly dead scholar stops when the door begins opening. You took your time. Elias steps inside. Vale looks past him. No guards. No thorn. No emergency alarms. Then he notices the archive heart. The old man's expression changes. You finished the translator. It finished itself. The heart taps the floor once. Vale actually takes 1 step backward. Apparently, legends in recursive containment theory are still allowed survival instincts. Elias hands him the recovered palimpsest diagram, then Helena Var's brass key. Vale's face hardens. She gave you this? Yes. Then she knows. Knows what? Vale looks at the number. 703. Then at the wall. He does not launch into an explanation. Good. Instead, he kneels beside an old floor seam, pushes the key into a gap, turns. A tiny plate opens. Inside sits a strip of ancient black stone no larger than a finger, same material as palimpsest. Vale places it on the floor. The archive heart immediately rolls forward. Elias blocks it with 1 boot. The companion stops. Learning. Vale looks at him. Keep doing that. Why? Because curiosity is apparently hereditary among structures now, not helpful. Still, the old professor has a point. Elias touches the stone strip indirectly through the brass key. Ancestral state opens. 1 route. Not beneath St. Vere, far away. Beyond the Western District. Past the capital boundary. The Dead City network does not end under the capital. It continues outward, faintly, broken in places, but definitely outward. Elias releases contact. Vale watches him. You felt it, yes. Then St. Vere was never the edge. No, that is enough for today. Vale is released into protected custody under Rook's authority. Officially, a dead professor becoming alive again creates an impressive amount of paperwork. Rook seems personally offended by the forms. The archive heart steals 1 sheet by rolling over it. That helps nobody. 3 days later, St. Vere receives a new designation, National Structural Evidence Site. Temporary containment functions are transferred elsewhere. The prison's damaged sectors remain sealed. The palimpsest chamber becomes physically isolated behind independent barriers. No single government office controls them. Rook receives command of a provisional oversight unit composed of engineers, containment officers, and external auditors. Her first decision is extremely simple. No hidden modifications. Her second is even simpler. Nobody alters a foundation without an architect signing the damn plan. Progress. Elias receives an offer from the Crown. Restored rank, restored property, official pardon, compensation, a new office. He rejects most of it. Not dramatically. He takes back ownership of his surviving designs. He demands independent authority over reconstruction inspections involving St. Vere and all discovered palimpsest-linked infrastructure. And he accepts 1 title, not chief architect. That title belonged to the government structure that betrayed him. The new registration reads, Elias Voss, Independent Structural Custodian. Rook notices the word. Custodian? Different definition. 7 may disagree. 7 is welcome to file a complaint. That almost makes her laugh again. The mobile archive heart settles on Elias's new workbench in a secured engineering hall built above the Western Dead City relay. Below it, the stationary sepulchre core remains connected to St. Vere, not controlling the capital, guarding the interface. Its first permanent assignment is defensive. If palimpsest tries to broadcast another remembered state, functional recall answers automatically across the Western network. No citywide domination, no throne, no empire. A safeguard. That matters to Elias more. The man who built cages for governments now builds a system that prevents 1 buried structure from deciding what every other structure should become. Days pass. St. Vere stabilizes. Released prisoners are transferred or retried based on evidence recovered from Mars records. Several convictions tied to falsified directorate cases are reopened. Wounded wardens return home. The Eastern Canal Bridge reopens after 4 days exactly. Rook makes sure to mention that Elias was annoyingly correct about the extra 2. He ignores her. Then the future starts knocking. Literally, the first sign arrives through the sepulchre core late one night. Not an attack. A distant structural pulse, far beyond the capital. The archive heart freezes on Elias's workbench. Its surface map expands. 1 thin line appears west of every known route, then another. The Dead City network continues beneath the outer provinces. A remote node answers in custodian language. Once, twice, pause, 3. But it is not custodian 7's signature. Different pressure, different priority structure. Someone else is using the same ancient system. Elias takes out the city map. It is useless now. so he unfolds a regional foundation survey instead. The pulse aligns beneath an abandoned fortress called Black Meridian Station, almost 60 miles west, a former military prison. Closed decades ago after subterranean collapse. Of course it is. Elias marks the location. That is the first unanswered question from palimpsest becoming a new route. The second arrives the next morning. Etta Sorn walks into the provisional engineering hall. No gray Meridian uniform, no escort. She places the custodian tuning spike on Elias's desk. The archive heart immediately rolls toward it. Elias catches the companion with one hand. Again, Etta notices. Still curious? Unfortunately, she slides a folded strip of paper beside the spike. Only 3 words. Treasury node breached. Elias looks at her. 7? Etta shakes her head. That is worse. The Meridian office evacuated it before dawn. Why? Because someone entered from below, not through the ministry. From the dead network, another user, another faction. Possibly the same signature near Black Meridian Station. Etta does not ask for asylum. She does not explain her loyalties. She simply leaves the tuning spike, then waits. Potential ally. Potential rival. Definitely useful. Elias takes the spike. You're staying. Etta raises an eyebrow. For questioning? For mapping. That gets her. Rook walks into the room at exactly that moment. Sees Etta. Sees the spike. Looks at Elias. No. Yes. Absolutely not. The archive heart taps twice. Alternative path. Rook points at it. You are not helping. Tiny normality. For approximately 10 seconds. Then the sepulchre core pulses beneath the floor. 3 short, 1 long. 2 short, the archive heart responds. Its surface map changes again. A new mark appears beyond Black Meridian Station. Not a route, a structure. Massive, buried, dormant, and connected to at least 4 branches Elias has never seen. Functional recall cannot identify its purpose from this distance. Ancestral state returns only 1 fragment. Containment, extremely old containment. Elias stands. He takes the regional survey, marks Black Meridian Station, marks the treasury node, then draws 1 line between them. Rook watches. Where are you going? He closes the survey case. West. Etta looks toward the archive heart. The companion has already rolled to the door. Naturally, Elias picks up the custodian tuning spike. Rook curses quietly and grabs her coat. Behind them, Saint Vere remains standing. Thorn is imprisoned under lawful authority. Mar is buried beneath evidence, his own secret corridors preserved. Var is cut off from palimpsest. The capital is safe. The arc is finished. But beneath the roads beyond the city, dead structures are beginning to answer one another again. Elias opens the engineering hall door. The archive heart rolls through first. And this time, the man who once built the perfect cage is heading out to discover just how large the prison beneath the world really is.